All right. Well, hello to our future selves and people that have missed the live session. We're here today to talk about introduction to email marketing. And I want to start with this very important question. Obviously, we're all in this class. We realize that email matters, but I think it's a good primer just to get us in the mindset. So for the next minute or two, I just want to quickly explain why email matters, and then we'll get into tactics and techniques very quickly. We will level up very quickly. But of course, in 2016, I think this really highlighted how impactful email still can be and is all the way through to 2021, where we are. In fact, this was a famous article that was the desperate scramble for Bernie's secret weapon. And because we're in this course, we can probably identify what his secret weapon it was. It was his large army of grassroots supporters that were donating via email. And once he left the campaign cycle in 2016, this was something that Democrats across the board were fighting for. It was the most coveted and valuable at the time catalog of potential voters and donors for them. And it was his crown jewel. It was really a powerful thing. And it's not isolated to just this one man. We've seen this across politics, across, all the way around the board. And while the campaigns are using newer social media to drive home their message, old fashioned email addresses are still crucial to fundraising. And in 2012, Ted Cruz's campaign was most notably revolutionary on this front. The Obama campaign was the first to break that $500 million mark. $500 million. That is just so much money. The Clinton campaign continued that trend in 2016. And in the past election cycle, on the presidential scale, we saw these just continue to trend. In fact, the Joe Biden campaign actually exceeded $1 billion in fundraising. And largely all of that was on the back of email and text message fundraising. And then, of course, the Trump campaign was not a small campaign by any means either. We had almost 1 billion, 0.8. So that is a lot of zeros. $800 million of fundraising is happening here. So we know that these things are working. And this is another article that really cites it. And occasional misfires aside, campaigns, political organizations, etc., still raise far more money off of email than any other digital platform, including social media. And really, it's all about the person's mindset. When you go to check your email, maybe you did that this morning, like I did, you probably were prepared to take those action-orientated or action-based decisions. Respond, donate, click. All of these things are action-orientated, and it's unique in email where we have that mindset where we're ready to take action every time we open up our email accounts. And so that's a way that's not true when you're scrolling through your Facebook timeline, as an example. And something you receive via email might cause you to pull out your credit card. So of course, the bad news about these constant emails is that they work. And kind of what I hinted at the beginning is this. I think this is one of the most important things, especially for conservatives that are worried about big tech. If you're worried about online censorship, then email is absolutely one of the most effective answers that I have in responding to that question of what do we do about online censorship? What do we do about big tech? Well, I always like to tell people that when you're on Facebook and you're communicating with your audience there, that's a rented audience channel. That's rented from Mark Zuckerberg. When you're on Twitter, that's Jack Dorsey's audience, right? And we're renting from him. But when we convert to an owned channel, our email list, we control the rules of the game. No one can censor us, and we can continuously have a communication with our supporters, our audience members and colleagues, etc. And so email allows you to fully own your space. And we live in a world now where social media is doing things that may not be great for marketing and political purposes, in the sense that, number one, most of them have completely eliminated, and I'm being a little hyperbolic, but have almost completely eliminated organic reach. Gone are the days of you posting on a Facebook page and reaching 50% of your audience organically. These days, on average, if you have a Facebook page with 100 likes on it and you post on it, you'll be lucky to hit 6 to 10 of them. And honestly, when you share a link with that post, it might just hit 5. And so it's very tough these days. And it's not just Facebook. Here's an article from Twitter, of course. The Twitter platform is constantly changing and is often criticized for shadow banning or censoring conservative content, but also it's not chronological anymore. And of course, we can go social media platform by social media platform. Here's Instagram, who recently changed their algorithm to be a relevant score, which means that if you're trying to reach your audience, likely it's going to be a pay to play environment if you're existing on a social media platform. And so email allows you to first and foremost avoid a lot of those pitfalls and relevance scores and algorithms. And after you've built your email list, emails are free to send. And so first and foremost, it is low per unit cost. Once people are on your team, you can consistently continue to reach them. In addition to that, you can add personalization and personalized content to scale, which is really incredible. Even just starting with, hey, first name makes a tremendous difference. And that's something that we can't really do on a social media platform. And of course, we can better understand user behavior, getting an under the hood look from whatever EMS that we're using, email service provider, whether it's MailChimp or Constant Contact or Drip or Active Engage. We could go down the list again. We can see how our emails are being responded to. And some other big things is we need to reach our supporters on a consistent level. And email addresses are one of the most stable forms of identity online that there is. And your email address, and if you're like me, which is kind of embarrassing, but we all kind of had that embarrassing moment. If you're like me, kind of grew up, didn't have the internet, and then the internet kind of showed up one day. You had to create your first email account. I think my embarrassing email was, and it wasn't that embarrassing, but it was like footballguy47@msn.com or AOL, I forget exactly. And then it turned into my brother and I had a shared email address, BS Roboys. But once I got my professional clean email, like most of us have at this point, you probably have had it for a long time. And that really is the case. It's one of the most stable forms of identity that we have for people online. And then we can use emails. People are used to giving their email to people, both in person and online, which lends itself well to collecting more of them and growing the size of our list. And then we can reach those supporters in other channels. Of course, like I said at the beginning, we're probably all pretty convinced that email's pretty cool. And you want to start getting into tactics, techniques, strategy. So let's do that. Let's move on to that right now. Let's start by evaluating what's happening now in the world of email marketing, specifically yours. And I think this is one of the best places to really begin when we get into strategy overall, because as leaders, we need to stop seeking comfort in sheer numbers, aka website visitors, blasts, leads, touches, things of that nature, and be sure we are giving due consideration to the quality of our engagement on all fronts. So out of the touches that are coming from your organization, your brand, your email marketing efforts, what high value content is provided in your email blasts? And I'll say this right now, it is absolutely better to add 20 engaged subscribers to your email list than it is to add 100 unengaged subscribers. And I've seen time and time again in the political process and over the course of my career, I've seen dozens, I'll just say dozens of email lists, and I've seen many of them outperform others, and they were smaller, but they had a high quality enveloped inside of them. And another comparison point that I like to bring this to is doors that are knocked in politics. A lot of people will say you got to knock as many doors as you possibly can. And that's true. You should knock as many doors as you possibly can. But most people still forget about the quality of the engagement. And that really is one of the most important things we need to focus on at the very beginning. We need to be giving people things that are valuable, whether that's information, whether it's a product, whether that's a service, but it has to be high value. And if we don't have that at the very beginning, the rest of our email marketing program is going to be an uphill battle. So we have to at first provide quality and focus on that quality. Quantity will come, but with good quality, you're going to be in a much better situation for success. So some questions for you. For the person that's just getting started, what's your goal? And of course, for those of us that may be a little further along the way, of course, I realize we're all coming to this training in different respects. Some of us have never sent an email to a mass email. Others have email lists of 10,000, maybe 1 million, and it can grow from there. But I just want to start here. But again, we're going to get up there pretty quickly. So right at the beginning, again, what's your goal with your email marketing program, right? Are you trying to drive traffic? Are you trying to raise money? And what did you promise to subscribers when they did sign up? Oftentimes there are pledges or promises enveloped inside of that. And of course, what do your subscribers expect to see from you? Very important questions that you have to answer. These are questions that really fall on you. And I would really write these down or think through them pretty clearly in your head as you're writing these emails. What is your goal? For example, if I'm writing an email on behalf of Leadership Institute, my goal may be to get people to attend my training. It could be to get people to volunteer, but nevertheless, I have my goal first and center at the top of my mind. And then of course, some other questions is what vendor you have decided to work with. And we can go a bunch of different routes here when it comes to different vendors. And in a world of 2021, a lot of these vendors, it's a lot like Coke and Pepsi, where they both taste delicious, but you have a preference based on your personal experiences. But the most common vendors that we see are Constant Contact, MailChimp, Drip, ConvertKit, Active Engage. Those are all ones that may have perked your ears or that you are currently using. So what vendor have you chosen to use? And that's really a big step. If you're a person who thinks that you can just start an email marketing program off of Microsoft Excel or Google Sheets, it can only take you so far. You're gonna need to get one of these vendors if you don't already have one. So let's take that important step. What kind of information can you see when you subscribe to these vendors? They will provide different levels of analytics. And of course, what features will they be able to give you? And if you're a nonprofit, I generally recommend pushing people to Constant Contact because their pricing is great and the support team is top notch. And if you're running anything where you're trying to sell, maybe you're trying to get people to get a course, or you're trying to get people to donate, or you have an online store, you're doing e-commerce, then I generally recommend a product called Drip, and it's DRIP. Because it's the best e-commerce email marketing software that I've seen. And then if you're more of a blogger or a content creator, maybe you have a YouTube channel, or maybe you're just trying to talk to your friends and family with the regular email list, then I'd push you more towards MailChimp. It's free to get started for the first 2,000 contacts. And really, those are my first two priorities. If you are looking to choose, I push you more towards MailChimp and Constant Contact. However, of course, over the 2020 election cycle, we've noted that there have been some instances of censorship by email marketing services like MailChimp that happened to one conservative campaign. However, we've not seen that happen again, so we're still comfortable recommending them as a service. But I did want to mention that and flag that there was one brief incident that happened over 2020. But the features of MailChimp, and also I'm not paid by these people to like advocate for them. Also, I want to add that disclaimer. These are what I find personally valuable. However, if you find someone that works at these companies that wants to start paying me to market their services a little more than the other one, we'll talk after the webinar. No, just kidding. But with MailChimp, free under 2,000 contacts. The premium version is $300, like $299 a month for 200,000 plus contacts. And then with Constant Contact, it becomes much more cost effective once you get above 2,000 contacts. And with MailChimp, you can export that. So if you can outgrow MailChimp, then move over to Constant Contact, that's not a bad idea at all. Where at Constant Contact, it's about $20 a month or $45 a month for their Plus service, which will give you more in-depth analytics. And then roughly speaking, if you have more than 5,000 contacts, you're going to look at about $125-ish per month. But it's the best price for email lists that are under 30,000. So if you have less than 30,000 email addresses, Constant Contact is probably going to be your best pound for pound, dollar for dollar option. And if your list is greater than 30,000, and I don't expect it to for those of us that are like, whoa, 30,000 people, that's kind of a big list. But you'll get there, especially with this training. But if your list does become greater than 30,000, then I'd start pushing you towards Drip. I start pushing you towards MailChimp as a professional service and things of that nature. That could be a better direction overall. Great. So the other thing that we need to do is just fundamentally understand our list size, and we need to know what that looks like and be tracking that on a weekly, quarterly, and yearly basis is what my recommendation tends to be. And then of course your emails, and we're tracking that over time. Luckily, most services that we've just talked about, those services will track this for you. So we don't have to necessarily reinvent the wheel, but we do need to keep our finger on the pulse. We need to be looking at these. And one of the most important steps that boosted my email marketing program when I was first getting started, I think it's a mistake that a lot of people will make, honestly, is you kind of have one person who's siloed off as your like marketing individual, your email coordinator, your marketing director, something of that nature. And they're able to report back to people. And when they report their successes. They say, this was the best performing email. But oftentimes that person, and rightfully so, sometimes they're trying to get a raise, they're trying not to get fired, but they won't tell you the underperforming things. They won't say which emails performed worse, or that we had this many unsubscribes happen over the course of this period of time. And one of the best things that helped me at my career was being very brutal with the reporting structure that let me send all of my data to my higher up at the time. which means that I couldn't pick and cherry pick different stats that would make me look better. And I did this purposefully to hold my feet to the fire, but most people won't do that. You'll kind of pick the ones that make you look good. Don't do that. The vanity stats is what we call them, are very impressive. And while they look attractive, oftentimes what we call your KPIs, your key performance indicators, KPIs, those are what really matter. And most of the time, they may not make you look good on a particular week. If you send an email and you have an abnormally large amount of unsubscribes, but those are the things, and those updates are the ones that are going to make you fundamentally better at email marketing as a whole. So the other thing we need to understand is, how can people sign up for our email list? And we need to do a quick audit of that. How many different ways can people sign up for your email list? And in a lot of situations, people kind of hide their email list from people. Like maybe there is a web page on your website that's like, sign up for our email list, but that's really it, right? So we want to give people as many opportunities as possible to join our email list. There's a lot of different ways that we can do that these days. And of course, with these services, I'll pick on MailChimp because that tends to be one of the most common choices by most of us here, because it's free for the first 2,000 contacts. But these days we can even, create a QR code so people can scan it with their phone and then join our email list. But oftentimes, like I said, most people are like hiding their email list or the sign up page somewhere, and it's really difficult for people to get access to it. So we need to make that as easy as possible. So how can people sign up? Have I had specific sign up efforts or drives? And did you rent or purchase a list, which is also an important question that's out there. Generally speaking, I push people away from list rentals, and I also push people away from buying lists. And where I push you more, if you do want to go in that direction, which is a common question that I get often, is a rev share agreement, a revenue share. And list rentals can be okay in some situations, but more often than not, like I said, quality outweighs quantity. It is better to slowly build up a list over time of people that are on your team than to mass email people that don't know anything about you. The way I like to talk about it too sometimes is like, it's almost like you're in middle school. Imagine all of us in middle school, and I was not a good looking guy in middle school, so it was worse for me than probably you. But anyways, we're going to middle school, and there's a huge lunchroom cafeteria, and we're going to go sit down at the popular kid table. And what people make the mistake of doing is just kind of talking about themselves and just announcing themselves to the world. And that's kind of how the internet works sometimes, where a lot of people who are starting something for the first time just plop themselves right down at the popular kids table and start talking about themselves a lot. And you're not making a lot of friends that way. And often it's a one-way conversation, and people are really confused and really probably turned off by, the self-grandization of yourself. And when we buy lists, oftentimes that's the exact same feeling, right? These people don't know you. They have a random email. They just got a random email from a stranger, and you're talking about yourself like they are your best friend, or maybe that, you're pitching them something that they're not interested in. But so that's why I always say it's always better to grow organically overall. But if you are going to go down that path, revenue share, list rentals, and make sure they're the ones sending the email. The biggest red flag if you're buying an email list is if you have to send to the email list using your service provider, like upload to your MailChimp and then send, because that's going to really hurt what we call your reputation, your sender authority. And that's how you quickly push yourself down to the promotions tab in Gmail and eventually to spam and things of that in that general direction. So just really important to consider the sources of how people can sign up, and my general thoughts on buying email lists. The next thing is segments. Segmenting is one of the most important things we can do with our list from a strategy perspective. And if we're not doing this, we are failing in a lot of ways these days, where we can segment by demographics, geographics, survey or quiz results, and also email engagement. These are some of the bigger things that we can start to use and leverage. For example, if I send out a survey, and I have a good example of one that I'm going to share with all of us as we get to some concrete examples of really good emails. But if I send you a survey and I ask you what type of conservative you are, and you respond, Stephen, I'm a pro-life warrior. I want to defend the rights of the unborn. And I don't capture that information after you filled out my survey and can segment you properly on my email list, then I've really failed in a lot of ways, because I can't be of service to you in the way that you've allowed me to be. And now the next time, if I did do it correctly and I have a initiative or policy or election related to pro-life issues, I can reach that person because I've segmented them properly on my list. And most email service ESPs, I'm just going to call email service providers, they will allow you to easily add tags to people. Just make sure we're doing this. And one of the better things is on an email sign-up form, if we can, there's a lot of different schools of thought, and we'll get to email sign-up forms as well, and pop-ups and things like that as we get through this training. But one of the things we can do is ask people for their zip code, right? And if we know their zip code, then we know their demographic. And so if we have a training that's happening next to them, or we have an event that's happening right by them, we can ping them, right? So the bigger segments that I like to capture are always demographics, geographics. Let me just type these out real quick. Survey or quiz results, and then email engagement. So those were survey and quiz results, but also we can segment people by engagement. So if they have opened our email in the past 6 months, we can call them an active subscriber. And if they have not opened their email, let's say in a different time frame, let's say 3 months, we can call them an inactive subscriber. And now we can come up with a strategy to reach that particular segment. We can deploy a re-engagement series. We can go a bunch of different routes, but it starts with segmentation. This is one of the most important things we can do, which is why I'm saying it at the beginning. We need to segment our list so we can more serve the people that are on it. The next thing is just our regular timing, what it looks like, when you want to send emails, the type of emails you want to send, and ultimately your goal, and if you're reaching that goal over time. A good question is, Stephen, when's the best time to send an email? Well, it's going to vary based on your list, and your analytics will absolutely show you the best time over time as you start to send more and more emails. But roughly speaking, morning times between 9 a.m. to 11 a.m., Tuesday through Thursday are the most accurate times that will lead to a higher open rate. Of course, your open rate is going to be, and we'll talk about the things that affect your open rate, but there's a lot of factors there. But in terms of timing, 9 a.m. to 11 a.m., Tuesday through Thursday, tend to be your sweet spot for the most engagement that you can possibly get, because people are at work, you know, they're not leaving for the weekend or just starting their week, and they're ready to take those action-based decisions, especially during that time frame of the week. And then, of course, the type of emails you're going to be sending. Are you sending email newsletters or re-engagement emails? And you know, overall, how many different directions are we going? And of course, our goal, which really matters. And I talked about that, and you wrote that down or thought about it. Your number one goal. So, are you reaching your goal with your email marketing program? So now, let's start heading where we want to go. We talked about some basic overall strategy with email. Let's start getting a little bit more tactical. And I want to start with just the goals one more time, because we thought about it. I asked you that question. You probably had some time to think about it for your goals for your email marketing program. And it always starts there. Your number one goal is that valuable real world action. And it's going to vary based on what we're doing. It could be activism. It could be fundraising. It could be getting, you know, people off of social media and into a seat to volunteer, to donate, to attend an event, you know, things of that direction. And we want to just really categorize what our number one goal is for our email marketing program. And we have additional goals as well. And I really recommend you track them like this. We have our time, we have benchmarks, and we're doing tracking of macro and minor goals. In terms of time, we want to have specific check-ins. And if you don't have these already on your calendar, I couldn't recommend them more. By the end of Q2, where do you want to be with your email marketing program? How many more signups do you want? How many emails are you planning to send? These numbers, when we set them up as a goal in front of us, will allow us to hit them. In a lot of situations, I compare this to like a treasure map, where you don't know where the treasure is, and so you're wandering around, you don't know where to go. But when you know where the treasure is, you can go from point A to point B and get there accurately. And to know where the treasure is, we set those goals. So we say by the end of Q2 in 2021, I want 100 new email subscribers, and I'm going to send at least 5 emails, because I'm sending my email newsletter weekly, right? But we have specific date check-ins, and my strongest recommendation down this path is to actually put it on your calendar. Whether you're using Outlook, whether you're using Gmail, we are going to start utilizing our calendar. And unfortunately, this lesson took me probably 9 times to hear it, saying, use your calendar, use your calendar. And I'm like, yes, let me put this in my calendar. I'm not really a calendar person, but I'm going to do this. And I keep ignoring the advice. And I promise you, my life started changing for the better the moment I took advantage of that calendar. And for those of us that have a calendar and use it every day, you know how effective it is. Make sure you're putting this inside of it. Of course, we're benchmarking ourselves as well. We're able to see how we're comparing against ourselves and the industry that we're in. and then tracking the macro and minor, knowing the event happened, and of course the email metrics along the way. The macro event might be that we raised $20,000, but the minor email metrics might be something along the ways like the average donation was $9.13. So we see the macro goal, and of course we have the minor ones we're tracking along the way. And then the types of emails that you're going to be able to send to people. There's a whole bunch of them, and you have a lot to choose from here. But these are ones that we need to be sending. I've got 3 that I think are critical to most email marketing programs. The first one is your engagement emails. Examples of that are your newsworthy information and updates, surveys, questions and answers, hosting a town hall, but just trying to get engagement from your email marketing. Then action emails as well. Action emails are go do 1, 2, 3, go donate, go volunteer, sign your name, things of that nature. And then we also have drip campaigns. And these are a series of emails. And these are really powerful. But the good news is that once you set them up, they'll be there for you, and it's an automated, beautiful system. The bad news is that it does take some time to set these up, but I promise you that it is worth it. I promise you, if you do not have an automated email series at this point, this is one of the biggest things that will revolutionize your email marketing program. And of course, on the bad side, like I said, it takes quite a bit of time to set up, and you're going to have to manage it based on kind of how you've set it up. But over the course of time, what we call this is onboarding, right? And I have a good example of this right here, but I call this onboarding. If you ever hired somebody before, or you ever been hired before, the organization or campaign, et cetera, probably onboarded you onto the team. They told you what to expect. They told you the lay of the land. Those are all very big things. And so we need to do that for our email subscribers. And so the question here is, what happens after they sign up? Well, we have an automatic email confirmation. In this circumstance, this is a really good workflow that I recommend. So an automatic confirmation email that redirects to a call to action or an ask, depending on what we're doing. Then we're going to deploy the welcome email series. Like I said, this is going to take some time to set up, but it's so worth it. And it reminds me of the quote, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, but the next best time is now. And so the next best time to set up a welcome email series is certainly today. And we can start to make low threshold asks and start to build on them piece by piece and consider a second opt-in along the way and maybe post a survey. And then again, now we can segment our lists just even more accurately, all a part of our onboarding process. And if people say no along the way, then we set them free. Of course, if they love us, they'll come back. We could also potentially deploy a re-engagement series. And if email may just not be their preferred method of communication, they may just want to receive text messages, or they may just want to have their door knocked on, or they may just want to be left alone. But it's always okay. And if people want to get off our email list, it's very important that we let them off. Now more than ever for legal reasons. However, for also ethical reasons, if people want to get off, they should get off. And so what a welcome email series looks like, roughly speaking, is right here. This is going to take some testing and some time for you to figure it out. But roughly, here's what we're going to do. Immediately, when people sign up for our email marketing program, we are going to deploy a welcome email. The welcome email is going to say, here's what you can expect, welcome to the brand, so to speak. Now, if they chose to open this email, we're immediately pushing them to an active subscriber list, and we're going to tag them and segment them as such. If they do not open this email, then we're already tagging them as inactive or anything else. We can rename it anything we want, but I think just for simplicity's sake, we've got active and inactive. Now we can go down that ladder of engagement. And so we're going to encourage habitual use if they're active and keep going. And if they're inactive, we're going to have a different strategy for getting them back over to that active front. But this is a really good way to start determining, the value of your email list. And it's also really important, like I said, that we start pushing people down the right funnels. And effective onboarding takes more than a single message. You should have one set of emails to nurture active users and a separate track to attract and engage inactive users. So here's an example of a welcome email series. This is Elise Stepanek, who is the new House GOP conference chair. I'm using her as an example because Stepanek in 2018 raised $2.8 million, but in 2020, thanks to our email marketing program, it shot up to $13.3 million in the 2020 cycle. and they called her, quote unquote, a prolific fundraiser. And that is the #1 job requirement for being the House Conference Chair in Congress in the United States. And so this is a really good example to use. This is the emails that she actually sent in this last election cycle in 2020. So here's the first email that went out from her campaign. And again, you're going to get a copy of these slides. And one of my favorite quotes is from Pablo Picasso: "Good artists copy and great artists steal." And so if you see things that you like in this welcome email series, please incorporate it into your email marketing program as well. But here's the first ask. It is to sign up for text updates. And one thing you'll notice as we kind of go through this, there's 3 emails here, but each ask really builds on the next and makes the voter feel like a team member of the campaign. And so as you can see today, I'm inviting you to receive special updates from me and my team. And then we've got welcome email number 2. Now this deploys, again, we saw the track, we had active and inactive. So this only deploys, they only get the second email if they open the last one. And this then deploys 48 hours later. And it's an ask number 2, a low threshold ask: fill out this survey. And of course, as I've kind of been drilling in our heads at this point, if possible, we're going to use their answers to segment our lists better. And we see the copy here. Do you think Republicans will take back the House on November 3rd? Tap or click here to complete our poll. And then it moves on to email number 3. Again, this one does not send unless they've opened the previous 2. But this is the perfect hypothetical scenario. People just really flowing through in the best way we can. And then we have ask number 3, which is a small donation ask. Chip in $5. We're looking for 3 donors in your area to chip in, and people do. And one of the greater things in politics is that deadlines don't move. If there's an end of quarter deadline, really lean into that. But welcome email series should be 2 to 3 emails. 2 is enough, but this is just a great example of 3 in conservative politics right now. And then the other one that I want to bring up is just reactivation campaigns, which I did briefly mention, but these are the people where they're not opening your emails, or they're not clicking or engaging in the way that you want them to. And so we should think about some reactivation campaigns if we have the time. I will say time is a very finite resource, and in a perfect world, you're going to be able to do all of these things in your email marketing program. But I certainly understand in a lot of scenarios, you may be a 1-person army. You're not only the email person, you're also the social media person, maybe the tech person, down the list. So I understand that some of us are wearing multiple hats. Other people may be working on a team, and you have 2 to 5, maybe 10 members of the team that are able to help out with your efforts. So we're all in different places here. So reactivation campaigns firmly fall into the bucket of you have additional resources, at least 2 people helping you out, because this is to get everything else set up in the first place is going to take up a lot of time. Reactivation campaigns will come by second after that. And these are just win back campaigns is what we call them. And it will reduce the churn on your email list. But again, it's going to be very time intensive if you want to start deploying it. But to get up and running, we need to do these 3 things. And first, before I say these 3 things, it's important to realize that people who join your email list are all arriving at different points. Some people have been receiving your emails for years, if that's as long as you've been doing it, and others may have joined today. And we need to keep that in mind. And so that's what I mean for getting up and running. For every new subscriber to your email list, there should be a welcome series. And we've talked through some examples of what that looks like at this point. For every regular subscriber, there should be some sort of email newsletter or series of updates. And so they are consistently seeing content from our email program. And there should be, for every major call to action, a follow-up series. So where we can hopefully get additional people on our email list to take that action. So really strongly recommend in those 3 categories what we're doing for all the new subscribers, regular subscribers, and when we have big pushes and major calls to actions. So we've talked about this from a strategy perspective for quite some time now. Let's get into actually crafting great emails. I'm talking about subject lines, I'm talking about click-through rates, and let's go ahead and start funneling it into there. It's going to be awesome. So before I do, I have a quick test for the group here. I want to test your skills, if you will. And this is a test that I failed the first time. So if you get this wrong, rest assured, I actually got this wrong too. But some people will get it right. But I want to test your gut instincts. And I think this is really important because in crafting great emails, but just to prelude this a little bit more, a lot of people listen to their gut and when they say these are the words that I should use, and they fall back to their personal experience. And oftentimes that may not be the best way to send a message or that will create the best result. And so gut instincts in a lot of situations online may be quite wrong. That's why I want to test your gut instincts right here. So this is a donation page. I'm about to show you two different versions of a donation page, and then you tell me in the chat A or B, which one you like better. So let's start with A. And this is compliments of the Heritage Foundation. Just talking through this really quickly. This is a challenge to their board. They're trying to fundraise, and they have 16 days left to double their gift. As you can see, we've got a really beautiful slider at the top of people getting to reach that goal of 150,000. As we scroll the web page, this is what you see. It's the board challenge. The words don't really matter too much, but feel free to look at them. But essentially, they're trying to fundraise money, and they're kind of justifying the reasons for fundraising this money. And of course, now they say, as we scroll down a little bit more, we are asking you to support this initiative now. And then at the bottom of the page, you're able to double your impact and make that donation. And then here's just the end of the donation page. And then, so this is A one more time. Let me actually just go back up. Okay, so as we're scrolling through this, we're scrolling through it. That is version A. All right, so now let's go to version B. Again, the same challenge, but because they tested these pages, they went with one over the other. But this is us testing our gut against it. So this is the top of the page. Again, we see that clock, that countdown clock. We see a pretty friendly image, the Heritage Foundation board challenge. And this one actually just pushes more into a donation page right away, but does explain along the side what's happening. Help Jim DeMint and the Heritage Board reach that challenge of $2 million. There's 12 days left to double your gifts, and then people are able to make that donation. All right, so here they are, side by side. Show of hands, A or B? The first one is A, the second one is B. Which one do you think was more effective? All right, we're getting a lot of good answers already. Good to see. All right, Clyde says B. Kiara says B, Tom says B, Carter says B, A, Caitlin says B, Hannah says B, Mateo says A, Alice says B, Anya says B, Talisa says B, Jack says A, Jacqueline says A, Cindy says A. We're seeing more B's than A's here, and it's a pretty even split. I would call that pretty 60-40, to be quite frank with all of you. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the drum roll is here, and I'm proud to announce the winner of this donation page experiment is A. A outperformed B. In fact, just here's the stats on it. That actually had a 44.4 increase on their conversions. The gift size was larger, and there was an increase in the average gift. Pretty shocking. And like I said at the beginning, if you guessed B, I also guessed B, because that would have gotten me to donate. Of course, the audience really matters. The timing really matters. One of the things that I think is one of the bigger distinctions that kind of gets lost in this training is that when they're sending this email or sending donors this web page, they tend to be people that are older. And so if you're over the age of 60, you may have also went with A, like how it actually worked out. And if you're under 60, you probably liked B a little bit more because it was visually appealing. However, you have to remember the people who are actually making these donations. And so that's probably why, just one small part of why A outperformed B. But really, I brought this whole thing up because running tests before you decide to send your next email will protect you against those threats of potentially being wrong by just trusting your gut, so to speak, and can do a lot to increase the effectiveness of your email marketing campaigns. And this will help you. Carefully A/B testing will help you optimize your newsletters and maximize your email marketing efforts. And so, yes, I encourage you to take the extra, yet critically important step of testing your emails to deliver a great subscriber experience and enhance your brand image through email. Now, not every test will yield a win as significant as this one, but every test does allow you to take steps forward and learn what to do. Carter just said they can see the progress of donations. It makes people more likely to donate. Yeah, that could also be a very legitimate reason as well. So let's talk about what we have. What do we have at our disposal here? We have our from name, our subject line, our pre-header. We have the actual copy, the words on the email, the body copy, and then our call to action. Everything on the left on this screen right now is your open rate. The from name, your subject line, and your pre-header are the three most important factors that will directly affect your open rate. And of course, the people you're sending it to, but just roughly inside of an email, technically speaking. And then the body copy and the call to action is going to directly affect your click and conversion rate, which we typically call our CTR, our click-through rate. So we got our open rate and our click-through rate. And let's start by working with our open rate. We're going to work through all of these so we can boost it across the board. So let's go through these just really quickly. First and foremost, on the open rate, you have your from name. You're the one sending the email, right? One of the best things we can do is make sure that there's actually a real name there. Unless we are Google, who can add no reply at gmail.com, that's just not any of us, then we need to have a reliable formula of a person, comma, organization. So an example would be Stephen, comma, Leadership Institute, or Stephen Rowe, comma, Leadership Institute, or Stephen Rowe at Leadership Institute as our reply name. We want this to look as much like a real email as possible. And most importantly, if people do reply to this email, it has to go somewhere where we can see it. And if we can't, then, or our email list is too large, we'll tell people that they won't be able to see we won't be able to see their message if they reply. But that's not the case for most of us. So in general, people need to be able to reply to your email, and that needs to be pushing to your traditional inbox where you're getting the rest of your responses, inquiries, comments, and things of that nature. So here's a good example of a from name. We see Kevin from Buffer. And that is a great thing to add into your email. If you haven't already done that, that's going to help a lot with your open rate. The next thing is your subject line. And let's talk about subject lines for just a second, because there is a lot to talk about in the world of subject lines. Rules are meant to be broken, but in general, 50 characters or less is going to be your sweet spot in terms of a powerful subject line. Of course, if possible, we need to add personalization and apply proper list segmentation. So personalization could be just first name. So the email says, Stephen, sign up for your next event, or list segmentation, there's a training happening near you. That's going to help a ton with open rates, and your subject line will just be that much more effective because we're talking to the right person with the right message. And also when it comes to subject lines, generally this is what I recommend, and then we'll show some examples as well, but we open the loop. We need to create an open loop by introducing a bit of information at the beginning, but not giving it all away. We're being purposefully coy. And I also really recommend, let me say it's more of a dichotomy actually, where we tell versus sell. And a lot of people will tell, and my recommendation is that we sell. And I know that sell sounds like a bad word, and it kind of is in a lot of ways, but that's what we're trying to do. And what I mean here is if you are not solving a problem, all you are doing is showing your audience a product or service and hoping that they will, quote unquote, see the light and make an appropriate decision. They probably won't. And so we need to be solving our audience members' problem. And if we're doing that, that's technically selling, right? So that's why I say selling is a good thing, but it has a bad connotation wrapped around it. But that's exactly what our subject line should be doing. We need to be solving people's problems. And then I also recommend avoiding anything too gimmicky. And gimmicky might be, just these aggressive adjectives and adverbs. This is the biggest, thing of the year. Things like that can get a little tricky pretty fast. And most times when you say anything hyperbolic in the sense that this is the biggest, this is the largest, this is the fastest, and people will immediately think this is too good to be true, or, all right, what's going on here? You kind of get those Spider-Man, they famously called them spidey senses, but your hair kind of goes up, you feel like something's off. And I call it, and excuse my language, I call it a BS detector, but humans are BS detectors, both yours and mine, have only gotten better over time. And so we can see through that pretty quickly. So I strongly encourage you to avoid anything too gimmicky. But things that do play well with subject lines are urgency, curiosity, things that are new, and engagement. Of course, time sensitive is huge. Curiosity is unexpected information or statistics, something new, something different, and open-ended questions are never bad in terms of engagement. Very positive things. So let's work through some examples of subject lines that incorporate these and some that miss the mark. It's good to see bad examples and good examples to know where we should fall along the way. So here's these first subject lines. Here it says, your new weekly guide is here. Or you've probably seen this in your email inbox from your bank or from maybe in just another email marketing program, monthly statement, or your weekly email. My recommendation would be to push away from these types of subject lines. And to put this in context, I like to call this the spotlight effect, and we need to be properly applying it. What is the spotlight effect? Well, I want you to imagine that you are on a main stage in front of a big crowd. In most situations, we will have the spotlight on ourselves because we're on the stage and everybody's looking up at us. However, you become tremendously more effective, persuasive, and powerful when you turn that spotlight onto your audience. And now we're starting to talk to them, right? And address their needs and their issues. And I think a good example of the spotlight effect is right here, where we see at the top, Stephen, time is running out, unlock your potential for 2021 versus it's official. The name of my new project is, right? Am I solving my problem or am I solving my reader's problem? Well, with the second one, while it is a kind of a cool subject line, I've got a new project, and what is the project? I'm being purposely coy. How is this helping the person that's opening the email? It's not. I'm being selfish right now. Again, it's that middle room lunch table. I'm just talking about myself. So we need to be solving the problem of our audience members. And that is a really big thing, and that is the spotlight effect. Now, here's some good subject lines that I think really hit it out of the park. All of the style, none of the stress, right? We're solving problems. Easiest gifts ever. Ideal. Always a good direction to go. Now, here's some more subject lines. Meet the Leadership Institute's newest training. Seems like a notable subject line. However, I'm going to pick on LI for just a second. This doesn't hit the mark, right? It's not the Leadership Institute's newest training. It's that this training is designed to help activists do X, Y, and Z. And that should be the benefits that I'm conveying in my subject line. Here's one that's going more on the urgency side of things, though. Just a few spots left. And then we say HTML, CSS, After Effects, and Premiere trainings. Very much highlighting what is happening. I think that starts to hit the mark a little bit more than the first one above. And then two more subject lines just really quickly. This one is more bent on the curiosity side of things. Why I love the 7-to-1 rule. And the 7-to-1 rule, as a fun fact, is for every 7 hours it takes to Google, watch YouTube videos, scroll through Reddit, scroll through the forums of the internet to figure out how to do something, you can replace those 7 hours of mindlessly scrolling with 1 hour of guided instruction, which is why training works so well and why you should take Leadership Institute training. So now you can see the rest of the email, right? And then of course, the other subject line, new course, how to support and energize your digital activism. Again, now we're starting to turn that spotlight on our audience members. However, I get that writing subject lines is not fun, and oftentimes we type it out and then just press backspace and get rid of it all, type it out again. We're very unsure, and then maybe settle somewhere along the way. I don't want you to do that anymore. So I have some tools for you to write great subject lines and also great headlines across the board while digital writing. I have two websites for us here, and it's CoSchedule and sharethrough.com. And I'm going to pull them up on the screen right now. Let me pull up CoSchedule. Here we go. And this one's paid. ShareThrough is free. So I've got a paid version and a free version because we're all in different places again. I remember my career when I first got started, I had like $2 and I was trying to market to people. And so I definitely understand the free versions and we'll try and offer those where possible. Okay, so we are on headlines.coschedule.com. And if you want to follow along as well, you can do so. Let me just post these links into the chat of Zoom really quickly. There we go. So those links are there for you. But look at this email subject line that I wrote. I said, are you using Google's quick access side panel? And the cool thing about this is it's telling me how it can be better. right? I can increase my power words. And now I can open this word bank and start to find some power words. I need to increase my uncommon words. And then they're seeing the word count, my character count, my reading grade level, the type, the sentiment, and the clarity. And overall, we hit a headline score of 60 and an SEO score of 65, which stands for search engine optimization. And so we did some quick workshopping with this. So are using Google's quick access side panel, not a great subject line. So we upped it to use quick access side panel to do more from Google Docs, Sheets, Slides, Calendar, and more. This one, we went backwards. We actually lowered our score to a 50. Now this thing is too long. The reading level is a 10th grade reading level. I said more twice, which is not great overall. And we just didn't hit the mark as well as we wanted it to. But again, because I have this scheduler, this analyzer, I'm just going to keep workshopping ideas, move these letters around, and eventually I got to right here. This one amazing tool will help you work more efficiently within and across Google. Now we're hitting a headline score of 86. We're doing pretty well. And really, if you score above an 80 on either share through or co-schedule, I promise you, your open rate will be noticeably bigger than the other emails that you're sending. So this is totally worth it for open rate purposes. But I didn't stop there. I scored an 86. I still kept working at the subject line a little bit. And ultimately, I scored a 91. And I ended up with the headline, one amazing tool to help you work more efficiently within and across Google. And that was started all the way at a 60. And I'm still talking about the same thing. I'm still promoting Google's quick access side panel. However, how I worded it was really important in terms of getting people to open the email in the first place. And then, of course, let me just grab this title and put it in share through. I will say share through is a little bit more of a harsh grader, but maybe that's for the best at the same time. So I put the same headline in here, and here I'm scoring a 69. So on share through, it'll still give me my suggestions, still give me my strengths, and I'm able to kind of start to make additional changes over time. And then my typical scores on share through tend to be above 60, and then on co-schedule, I always want them to be above 80. So that's really the goal across the board. Hopefully that's a good resource for some of us that are having trouble with subject lines. I found great value in it overall. So we still have to talk about pre-headers. We still have to talk about our click-through rate, getting people to click through, to take action. We've got so much to talk about here, but we are going to take our first break. It is 2:01 right now. Let's pause for 5 minutes. Let's come back at 2:00, let's say 2:07. At the start of 2:07, we'll kick back up. I'm going to be hanging out here. If you have any questions, feel free to type them in the chat right now. I'm not going to answer any questions or talk until 2:07. So the official break starts now. Oh, all right. Welcome back. We are here for part 2 of 3. The first hour was just getting good. We're about to pick up speed in hour number 2. And in hour 3, we're just going to coast to an amazing, great time. So let's pick things back up. I don't see any questions from the first hour. So we're just going to hop right back into the material and work on our open rates and click through rates. And the next place to focus on is oops, oh, click the right PowerPoint. There we go. Our pre-header. So this is what it typically looks like, your pre-header, right? The text that appears in the preview pane. After your subject line, after your from name, there's that little bit of words and copy that we can use to our advantage to help our open rates over time. Now, roughly, this is going to be about 100-ish characters. Desktops and webmail clients will show more than 100 characters, while mobile devices will typically show about 35 to 50 characters in your pre-header. Um, Generally speaking, if you're not using a template, and then it's going to pull the first words that are in your email. And that can be good, and it can also be bad. However, in most situations using Constant Contact or MailChimp and things of that ilk, you can set the pre-header, which you should do. And that is a great step to boosting your open rate. And some of the things you really need to watch out for when it comes to your pre-header is this one. Having trouble viewing this email, or it's saying, is this email not displaying correctly? The reason that that will happen is because a lot of people will use, well, there's a couple of reasons, but the bigger reason why is people will put a photo at the very top, which is kind of like your banner image or your masthead, so to speak. And we know, and you probably know this by opening your email today, that you had to click to download those pictures and images. And that is the case. And so that can really hurt your pre-header and of course hurt your open rate if you are not being mindful of what can happen there. The other thing that may pull as a heads up is alternative tags on an image. Alternative tags are essentially words that appear when the picture doesn't. And it also is a very good feature for people that have not mental, but just learning and physical disabilities, like they're deaf, they're mute. They may be relying more on alternative tags inside images. However, that text could potentially pop up in your pre-header if you're not careful, if the image is at the very top of an email. And then if you have that forward to friend, that could also very well pop up. So let's manually set this if we possibly can. And the pre-header text is really just something that should help your readers know what to expect and encourage them to open. And it's a little thing that can pay a big dividend. So a reliable formula here is personalization as always. People's first names are the number one thing in the English language or in any language that is your favorite word. It's your name. And so if we can use our people's names, we absolutely should. Of course, we can push more towards an interesting opening line or the mention of specific benefits as well. Got a good question from Lewis, who just asked, is a good practice to pull the line for unsubscribe on top of an email instead of the bottom? Put the line, the line for unsubscribe on the top of your mail instead of the bottom. I would actually encourage you to do the opposite. I would put the unsubscribe or the option to remove yourself from the mailing list at the bottom of the email. And if people want to remove themselves from that email program, the best thing about it is they'll at least scroll through that email before they make that final choice to unsubscribe themselves from the list, and we'll honor that unsubscribe. But to answer your question directly, I strongly recommend it at the bottom. Now, the next thing that we have is the body structure of our email itself. And again, depending on the services that you're using, this may change just a little bit, but roughly speaking and mostly speaking, we want a 600 pixel width and a single column email layout. Single column being the most important thing across the board. 9 times out of 10, it should be a single column email layout. And the reason for that is if you have a double column, or I've never actually seen a triple column, but I'm sure someone's tried it before, email, then your text is going to shrink and it's going to look really bad, especially on mobile devices, just because the resolution and quite frankly, space that's available on a mobile device is limited. And so single column email layouts work perfectly on mobile devices and on desktops. Conversely, if you use a dual column email layout or something even further down that path, you're going to have a lot of trouble getting people to fully digest all the content you're sending. The other big thing is a sans serif font tends and statistically works better and converts better than serif fonts. Sans serif just means without tail, and serif means tail. So sans means no tail, and then serif is tail. Some examples of that, of a serif font, is actually the word's body structure on this slide. This is a serif font. And then, of course, my font down below is a sans serif font. And it's always indicated by those like tails that you see up here. You know, we see the Y right there, and then, you know, the D's kind of coming up right there, and all of that. So sans serif fonts tend to work best. And then, of course, we want to make everything as easy to click as possible. And roughly from paragraphs, your paragraphs need to be as inviting as possible. So it's also important to consider the device being used to access your paragraphs. And when you're testing your emails, and if you're not checking your phone, that's another big thing that we should do, is if you're going to mass send emails to people, send it to yourself first and have a couple emails. One of the big tips that I do is I have an email at Yahoo, I have an email at Gmail, and then I have an email at Outlook, and they all forward to each other. And so when I send it to my test email, it'll forward through all of those different venues. And then when I see it at the end, I can see how this email will look on all of those different clients, those being the biggest three. I could add more, but I only have 3 at this point. But it's just something, food for thought, and something you can potentially be doing. But more importantly, we need to be making sure people may easily scan our emails. People scan emails. They don't read emails in more situations than not. And so we need to bold, we need to add indentation, and make sure that we're being very purposeful about guiding the reader's eyes throughout the email, and make those links easier to click, and consider buttons. Buttons work tremendously well. And to be quite honest, I really can't explain it, but the color of your button also really, really matters. And I've had different tests and different results, and the color of my button has yielded better results than others. For example, I tested a red versus green. I thought the green was going to win, and the red actually won. And then I've also, in a different email list, I tested red versus blue, and blue won. And so there's no universal color. It's going to depend on your list and the particular ask and the situation. But these are things that we can start to be testing and start to try to figure out over the course of time. Cindy just said, I've used double and maybe even triple columns in emails where it fits best. Preview your draft in Constant Contact as a desktop view and mobile device view to find the best fit. Yeah, I think the most important thing you just said there, Cindy, too, is that you are previewing that draft. I think that is fundamentally the most critical thing we can do there. And I still would generally push people more towards a single column email layout. But if you've had success, keep following that success. And if your statistics aren't lying, your analytics make you are positive, keep doing what you're doing. I always like to say rules are meant to be broken. And because every time we're doing these trainings, we're saying, do this, and do that. And in a lot of situations, sometimes by going against the grain, you can have a lot more success in some circumstances. So there we go. Now, the next thing is click-through rates. Your click-through rate really is just your total clicks divided by your total amount of impressions. And so if I sent this email to 100 people and I got 10 clicks, I've got a 10% click-through rate. Now, that is abnormally high. What does a good open rate look like? On average, it's going to be above 30%. Anywhere between 35 to 50% is going to, I'll tell you have a good open rate. If you get below 30%, we're going to start having some real trouble. And then when it comes to click-through rate, anything about 2% is great. Anything above 1%, you're still good. And if you're less than 1% on your click-through rate, we need to start segmenting our lists. We need to start looking back at our overall strategy and look at the copy that we're writing. But a good click-through rate is going to be about 2%, and a good open rate is going to be above 30%. And the thing I want to say here too that is important is this is really important if you want to appear in the primary tab, so to speak. We'll pick on Gmail because it is the largest email client. And if you've used Gmail before, you notice there's primary, there's promotions, there's subscriptions, and then there's junk and spam and all of that. How do you end up in the primary tab? Well, the answer is you have a very high open rate. That's one of the most important factors that Google looks at when they see your email coming into their server. And if you have an open rate that's above 40%, generally speaking, you're going to be more often appearing in the primary tab across the board. And if you're not appearing there and people are saying that, hey, I didn't see you, you're in my promotions tab, probably a good indicator that our open rates are down. And that's something we need to work on fixing. And maybe just cleaning up our list, segmenting active versus inactive and making those important adjustments along the way. But your open rate will directly your open rate will directly promote the placement of where your email is appearing in people's email inboxes. Now we're ready for the deep dive. So we worked through open rates and click-through rates. Now I really want to start working on some templates for success. And before I get there, I think it's important to make sure, kind of like the spotlight effect that I brought up in the first hour, that we're in the right frame of mind when we're writing copy via email and for writing on the World Wide Web as a whole. And it starts right here. It's a dichotomy of features versus benefits. And I would argue that conservatives and libertarians are especially terrible at this, in the sense that a lot of people will focus on the features when they should be focusing on the benefits, right? For example, the one that I like to use is school choice. And maybe I'm pulling up a graph, maybe I'm pulling up some stats. I could cite off a couple of stats right now that people that are homeschooled statistically outperform people that go to public school in college. And those who go to private and charter schools will graduate in 4 years at a much larger rate than those who go through the public education system. And I could start hiding more and more stats, and I'm sure we all know school choice is amazing, but how does that benefit anybody, right? We're talking about the features. We need to be very benefit driven with what we're saying to individuals. And there's a lot of different ways we can start to frame that story in a little bit of a better light, right? One of the ones might being that I don't want students' zip codes to determine their future. I want this person to have the opportunity to go to a different school and become a capable individual. And those are the benefits of school choice versus those stats and figures. And this happens across the board with our policies and prescriptions for the world. For example, we'll fast forward to, I think this Friday, we'll have some earnings reports, and we're going to see some nice GDP graphs of, maybe someone saying, oh, Biden's economy, not that great. I mean, look at this graph. But it's a graph, right? We're not getting very excited about that, or at least the average person is not. Maybe we will as political advocates, but a lot of people will not. And so we need to be more focused on benefits than features. The example I have here is a used car. So let's imagine just for a second that you and we're going to go buy this beautiful Honda Civic. And we go to the car dealership, and the guy walks up to us, or girl walks up to us and says, this is a beautiful car. Why are y'all here? And we explained to him that we're buying this car and we're really excited about it. And so it's his job to sell us this Honda Civic. Is he going to sell us on the features, or is he going to sell us on the benefits, right? Well, if he focuses on the features, he might focus on something along the lines of saying, this has 30 miles per gallon in the city, 40 on the highway. It's got a great towing capacity and curb weight. The torque is something where you're going to be happy. But that's not what's going to sell us this car at the end of the day. These are things that we probably looked up on our computer before we got there in the first place. It's a Honda Civic. We're pretty aware of roughly what it's capable of and what it's not capable of. So what the car salesman should do, and what I'm advocating you should do in more situations than not, is focus on the benefits, right? Here's the benefits of buying this car. It's going to be a safe and reliable car. It's going to get you from point A to point B reliably every single day. And you're going to be comfortable driving long distances by yourself. You're saving money. This is an affordable car, and you're looking good. You stop next to that stoplight, you're not going to look that bad in that Honda Civic, right? So that's what's going to turn people in a more positive light. I strongly recommend we focus more on benefits than the features. And for some reason, we're kind of hardwired to naturally push more towards features. However, benefits are what really will win the day. And as we talk about benefits, it's this question right here. Does this solve my problem, or does this solve your problem? And let's pick on LI for a second. Let's pick on Leadership Institute. And we can talk about the features of Leadership Institute. We were founded in 1979, and we offer 47 different types of training schools, workshops, and seminars, a free employment placement service, and a national field program that trains conservative students to organize campus groups. But while these are important features, here is the benefits, and here's the problems that we're solving. Here's what we do. We increase the number and effectiveness of conservative activists. Those are the benefits. And so from your organizational perspective, from your brand perspective, what are the benefits that you're able to convey to others? That's where we should be, and stop focusing so much on the features. The features are nice, but the benefits are how we persuade and inspire individuals to act. So I've got two templates here, and the first one is this one, AIDA. I did not invent this template, but I find it tremendously impactful and very effective when it comes to email marketing. Attention, interest, desire, and action. And when it comes to attention, we start our emails with a strong opening, right? In the first sentence, in most situations, people should be able to identify the who, the what, the when, the where, the why, and the how, all at the top. And we need to get their attention. We need to create stopping power. We need to allow people to just engage with our email. The next is interest, which is going to be the tie to our opening, our strong opening, to the offer, the reason that we're emailing them in the first place, whether we were selling a product or service or trying to get people to donate. After we've done that, we've tied that opening to the offer. Now we move into desire, where we explain the benefits or prove true that we really can, the proof is in the pudding. We can back up what we're talking about. And then of course we leave the reader in our email with a strong call to action overall. AIDA, attention, interest, desire, and action. And I also have one more template for us. Now, this next template is a series of 9 steps. You do not have to hit all 9 steps in every email that you send. However, these are good checklist items to keep in the back of your head as you are crafting the next email. First and foremost, we start at the top with the sharp, often unexpected opening line. Again, we need to get people enveloped into our email. And when it comes to unexpected opening lines, there's a couple of different directions we could go here. First and foremost, I really like unexpected statistics, facts, and figures. I think they're tremendous. And then the other way we could go is maybe a story. We could start telling a story or share a particular anecdote. But we want something unexpected and we want something engaging at the top. So the next part of the checklist that we may add or may not add is a short, engaging description or anecdote that gracefully transitions to number 3, which is always there, the presentation of the opportunity. One of my examples of this that I wrote recently in an email I was like, do you remember Rocky v. Apollo? And then I talk about in number 2, the short description of what happened. So it's the 16th round, and Mick is yelling at Rocky after he got knocked down really hard for the last time. Down, down, stay down, Rocky. But Rocky doesn't stay down. He gets back up. And then I gracefully transition. Rocky represents the struggles in life, like losing an election. And what we can do is be prepared for the next election cycle presentation of opportunity. All right, the next step and part of this checklist is number 4, description of benefits. And the more and specific, the better is really key here, especially specific to the person who you are emailing. And this is the worst from a email marketing perspective and the best from a person. Let me say that a little differently. This is not ideal for us, the people that are writing the emails. However, this is incredibly ideal for the people that we're sending them to. Is that a lot of us will make one email and then we're going to send that to everybody. But like I said, we want to send specific messages to specific people. And so when we have one email that's going to everyone with this one size fits all, it may not be as effective as sending a bunch of smaller emails, maybe like 2 to 4, maybe 5 different emails based on different segments. And then we're reaching people with specific descriptions of benefits of why this specific product, service, opportunity will benefit them. And then of course, number 5 is proof that we can provide those benefits. And then 6, we need to start giving people a link to take that call to action. That might be our first registration link. Sign up today, click or tap here, right? Learn more about this opportunity. Another part of this checklist is 7, where we explain more benefits. Oftentimes, especially for people that are engaging with us for the very first time, they may need a little more convincing. And of course, that's why we had that first call to action above. For people that know we can deliver on what we said we can deliver, they'll probably click that first link. Other people might say, all right, but what is this really? And that's really what number 7 is there for. And then the number 8 of the checklist is a second call to action. So we've explained it just a little bit more. Here's another chance to click. Number 9, we're going to close this out saying, thank you. Please share this email with your friends. It means a lot. Appreciate your time. And then, of course, number 10, which is a PS that summarizes the offer and adds one other additional call to action. Again, we're not doing all 10 steps for every single email, but this is a checklist of items that we can potentially be going through in our head of, have we added this? How many call to actions have we added? And have we added the descriptions? What does our opening line look like? And maybe we should add a PS. I think that PSs are very, very impactful and powerful, but where people miss the mark with your PS at the bottom is if you do it every single time. And if you do it every time, it's not special. And so I encourage you on that number 10 on the template, is to save your PSs for when you really need them, or at least scatter them out to maybe every other email or a little bit more infrequent than that. And you'll find that your PSs will convert a little bit higher than you could imagine. And then Lewis just said 2 different call to actions or a call to action twice. That's a great question. In this circumstance, this is a call to action twice. However, it's going to be worded a little bit differently, but it's the same opportunity. So yeah, call to action twice. And let's talk about calls to actions. Okay, before I do, Mateo just said, is this the best model template? There are others. There are a couple others out there, but the 2 templates here I have found to be the most effective in politics. AIDA, and then that 10-point checklist of are these enveloped into my email? And unfortunately, there isn't a fun acronym for our checklist, but an important one nonetheless. The other ones that might exist out there, I've seen a couple of them. So ones that I've seen that are popular, and they're just worded a little differently, to be honest with you, but they fundamentally have the same thing. The first one is an inverted pyramid, where you start at the top. It's a pyramid, except you flip it upside down and you work your way down. That's also a great way to visualize kind of how we're presenting an email and how we're typing it up, where we're giving everybody we're front loading our content, giving everybody the good stuff first, and then from there, we'll kind of push into our description, we'll push into that call to action. And so that inverted pyramid is just one other way that I've seen that's incredibly popular out there. But these 2 are the best ones that I recommend overall. And then Lewis just said, could 3 be better roughly, and then better not to use picture? Okay, so I like both those questions. Let's start with the first one. So it depends on the length of the email, roughly. So if your email is, let's say, 500 characters, which is typically what an email looks like, it's about 500 to 1,000 characters on average, then 2 will probably be enough. 3 is already there if you added a PS. But most importantly, we can test it. And so what I would do, let's imagine that I have an email list of 100 people, again, just for simple numbers and simple math. Before I send to the 100 people my email, I can send, and I'm going to test one thing every email that I send. And we should get into the habit of that. We're going to test one thing every time we're sending emails. However, here's what's going to happen. I'm going to send an email to 10 people, and I'm going to send A and B. So A is going to 5 of those 10 people, and B is going to the other 5. And then based on these test results, I'm going to send to the other 90 people. But first, we're doing this test. And so test A is going to be 2 links, and test B will be 3 links. And if test B leads to a greater conversion rate, more click-throughs, well, then I'm going to send version B to the 90 people. So that's what I mean by testing. And I think that's an important thing to do, because it's going to vary based on your email list. So while a lot of these are best practices, oftentimes, your subscribers are going to be the ones telling you what the best course of action should be. And the most important thing we can do is listen to them. And when they click, they are talking. And when they're talking, we need to listen. And then your second question was better not to use picture. I actually find pictures and video to be extremely effective in terms of calls to actions. But there's some important caveats here, because I say this right here on the slide, actually. I do not recommend using image. So traditionally speaking, links and buttons will outperform images. However, all your images should be click-throughable, like clickable. I should just say clickable. Yeah, clickable. And if they click on the image, then it'll direct them in the same direction. But Just from my personal experience and data, links and buttons have worked far more and far better than pictures have. However, the images that have worked the best these days, especially this year and the past year, have been videos. And of course, you can't directly put a video into an email, but what you can do is take a screenshot of that video with the play and add a play button in Adobe Photoshop on top of it. And when people click play, it just clicks through to a landing page where the actual video is, and they can click play one more time and actually watch the video. That's been really effective lately. So that's one direction to go. But on average, links and buttons will outperform images. And then always, almost always, I will say again, let's add a little bit of variability there, but almost always, we want to direct to a landing page. And basically all landing pages is where they land, right? They click through and then they're on a specific web page that is in relation to the offer or call to action that we've sent in the first place. This leads to a tremendous increase in success. For example, let's say that I want somebody to donate. Well, if I donate and if I just ask them to donate, then it's important that I push them to a landing page that hopefully has maybe a video on it that explains the importance of this donation, maybe a picture of a candidate in a more of a political setting, and then it allows them to make that donation. And that's the only thing it allows them to do. There's no option to go to my blog. There's no option to see the policy issues. There's no option to read the About Us page. The only thing this landing page is designed to do is collect your credit card information. Now, this is an example of when we're fundraising, but we also want landing pages for our email acquisition. So if we're trying to get people on our email list, we probably want a landing page that its primary goal, the only thing it should do is to capture people's email accounts. And that's very intentional. Tom just said, yes, you can embed a video depending on the email provider. Yeah, traditionally speaking, and yeah, in most situations, and I'd be curious to see the email provider that allows that to happen. But if you do, let me know, Tom, because I definitely want to look into that. Most of them will not allow that, but I have seen one variation of it where the email provider, and this may be what's happening with this one, but when they clicked on the video, it pushed to like this quasi landing page kind of pop-up situation, which was a little bit more unique. But traditionally speaking, most of them will push to just a straight landing page. And you called it sender. Well, Tom, I'm going to look into that. Thank you. That's really interesting to learn. Anna just said, what should be the minimum list for A/B testing? You need a certain list size for testing to be effective, right? So that is a good question. And for the most part, your instincts are right there. However, even just a small amount of anecdotal evidence can still be tremendously powerful, even though it may not be as scientific due to the sample size. But roughly, minimum is tough because all of us have very different sizes of our email lists. Like if like my email list at Leadership Institute right now, ours is I think 250,000 people, which is not that big, but bigger than most people's in a lot of different situations. And then I would say my minimum test is going to look a little different. But on average, as a percentage, I would test roughly 1 to 2% of your list size. And that should give you what that number looks like. Let me say this in a different way, because this actually doesn't extrapolate very well if our list is smaller. For example, that 100 email list, I'd probably test 10 people, but that's 10%. But as we get larger with our email list size, those percentages start to become very significant. And that's why I had 1 to 2% in my head, but then I just started thinking of the smaller email lists. So it will vary, Anna. Let me say this. If you have an email list, I would not stop collecting email addresses until I had at least 100 people on my email list. And then from there, I would start working at that 5 and 5 and then start to build up from that. Once we get to 1,000, once we get to 10,000 people on our email list, that's when we start testing 1 to 2% and then pushing to the rest of the email list. And depending on segmentation and tagging and things of that nature. But I guess the minimum list size is 100 to give you a number. But even I would still, if I had 50 people on an email list, I would still probably do an A/B test between 4 people, do 2 and 2, see if one made a difference, and then send to the rest of the list. So I'm going to say 100, but it can still be less than that. So you do need a certain list size for your testing to be more effective. To answer your second question, yes. For it to be a statistically significant test, that's when it usually you need to be testing, generally speaking, at minimum about 100 people. And then there's going to be some variation on that based on a couple things like regression and depending on kind of how you're doing your analysis. But for it to be effective, roughly 100 is really your scientific number of where you start getting more accurate results. But like I said, anecdotally, you still find tremendous value in testing at small levels. Sterling just said, do you find longer or shorter emails to be more effective? This is another one that gets a little tricky again, because it's gonna be quite different based on my product. It's gonna be very different based on my service and what I'm offering to people. But on average, I find more value in emails being longer than shorter. And now I'm not saying crazy long, but oftentimes an email that is even just 400 characters will outperform one that's 300 characters, just because there's more effort into it. Oftentimes when people go the shorter email route, you're going to find yourself maybe shortcutting yourself in the sense that you may type it a little bit quicker. You may, put it together or just use a template or just copy and paste some words over. And when emails tend to be longer in time, longer in nature, people spend more time crafting those words, crafting that language, making sure it's the right piece of copy for that specific email. And so if I had to choose, I'd push you more towards longer for those reasons that at the very least, you will be able to create a lot of good copy, a lot of good words, and then start to trim that down into maybe more refined product. But you're not able to trim and refine if you're stuck in that shorter email where you only have like 200 characters to start with. And so, like I said, there's some variation there, because I've seen short emails work tremendously well, and it's going to vary based on what is going on in terms of the email offer. But to just give a general statement, I'm pushing you towards longer. But please do not think I'm discounting short emails, because those are tremendously effective too. But on average, longer will usually win the day. Next, with calls to action, just to kind of move on to the next slide. These have been great questions too. I'm very thankful for them. Please keep asking away. Hopefully I'm giving good answers, but I'm thrilled. So anyways, calls to action. We want to start with an action word, of course. Action words being like free or new, proven, easy, yes, never, imagine, things like that. And then we emphasize the benefit, and we also emphasize that they need to take action immediately. There's not a lot of people that will open an email in this world and then close it and come right back to it later on, 2 weeks later, 1 week later, 2 hours later. It just doesn't happen. And so we need to emphasize urgency almost always inside our calls to actions. And next, with our engagement emails, we as we're deploying an engagement series, again, prompt, sincere thank yous are key. Making sure that this is automated along the way is huge. Again, this is one thing that we set up at the beginning, and usually this will carry us forward throughout the course of a campaign. If we're part of an organization, we should probably check this yearly. What does it look like when people sign up for your email list and also sign up for anything across the board? It's going to automatically push them some email on average. What does that email say, right? Hopefully it's a prompt, sincere thank you, where we can offer helpful information as well and apply a soft call to action where we ask them to reply to the email. And we can do that in our engagement emails. And I definitely recommend that as a practice. Now, one other thing that happens often, and we do this at Leadership Institute, so I put this on our example of this on the slide here, is multiple items. What if you're trying to give multiple things inside of an email to people? I want you to sign up for these 10 trainings in this example with Leadership Institute. My recommendation roughly is always a central theme with a personalized note at the start, which will then lead into the presentation of the opportunities. It's just important to realize though, if you are advertising multiple items, you will have a lower conversion rate on each item. If I just crafted this email, for example, we have on Monday, November 30th, it says Town Hall, and on Tuesday, December 1st, it says digital download. If I would just write this email for either one of those things and only promote that event, I will have, on average, generally more success in terms of conversion than by advertising them both in the email. However, by listing multiple things, you're also giving people multiple options and multiple menu, basically a menu, so to speak, of options to choose from. which could be helpful. However, if you're listing, 10 plus items, 15 plus items, it can start to feel a lot like the Cheesecake Factory, where if you've been to the Cheesecake Factory before, you've known this feeling, or any other menu like this. Maybe it's Chili's too. You kind of walk in, they give you the menu, and then there's just like 17 million choices. You're like, do I want things on page 3 or do I want things on page 27? There's just so much food. What if I choose wrong? Like, I don't know. And that same principle kind of happens in email a little bit. As you add multiple items, it just becomes a lot at once. And so less is always more on average, but multiple items do work. You're just going to get a lower conversion rate on each of those items. Let's come back to photos. So we had some questions on photos earlier, but now we're pushing back into them. Photos work well. When we do that though, I really recommend adding captions and alternative tags, not only because of accessibility, first and foremost, again, people that are deaf, blind, hard of hearing, mute, all have disabilities where captions and alternative tags help software services and them just viewing the email by themselves in some circumstances absorb the content. But more than that, it also helps with SEO, a lot of search engine optimization purposes. So I find a lot of value in it across the board of just adding captions and adding alt tags to our photos and images. And by SEO, I probably used the wrong word there. And I did not mean necessarily like search engine optimization in the sense that I meant it in searchability, searchability through email. So it doesn't necessarily exist on Google. So let me add that caveat right there. And we always want to make the photo clickable. There's nothing more frustrating than clicking on a photo that doesn't work. It just gets really sad. So let's make our photos clickable, especially if we're trying to use them as our calls to action. And then in most situations, centering them full width tends to be best so that it stays in the same place, whether it's on a mobile device or it is on desktop or a web client. It's going to be much better if it's centered and full width. So it takes up that full space and shrinks and grows accordingly, kind of like a responsive website does. And it's important to remember that good photos, videos, and design increase your credibility online. However, bad photos, especially stock photos, videos, and design will decrease it. So photos work, just use the right ones. And most importantly, I'd like to say people like people. So if you can ever show photos of, individuals, you're usually in a better situation than, sharing, a photo without people. I was trying to use a better example than that. Let's say there is a social media post. I'm talking about social media. And maybe I'm seeing there's one photo of a person that is a bunch of people like on their phones using social media. And the other photo is of the icons of the social media platforms. Statistically, people will lean more towards people on average. So I venture to bet without testing that people would choose the people looking at their phones over the icons themselves. Of course, we want to test those results, but statistically, people like people more than objects as they view it in marketing terms. So we have those templates now. I gave you the AIDA, and I gave you my 10-point checklist for success, which will increase your click-through rate. I promise you. Test it out, and if it doesn't, come back to me, and then we'll workshop a better one together. But to make them more effective, to double down on this, I have this book here, My Life in Advertising and Scientific Advertising. This is by Claude C. Hopkins. And I bring this book up because it is honestly one of the best books in marketing that has been written, in advertising that's been written. And a man by the name of David Ogilvy, who is very famous in the marketing world and advertising world. And a great way to think of it is like Mad Men. If you've seen Mad Men on Netflix, it's like the Don Drapers of the world back then. That's kind of what they were. That's kind of like who they were in real life, right? And one of them, his name was David Ogilvy, who still owns a very successful company to this day. But he wrote the introduction to this book and in part said, nobody at any level should be allowed to have anything to do with advertising or marketing until he or she has read this book 7 times. It changed the course of my life. And he went on to say, every time that I see a bad advertisement, I say to myself, that man who wrote this has never read Claude Hopkins. Well, this is the book that I'm citing in this next component. You can read the book, and I encourage you to. I have it actually right here behind me. But just because we're going to fast forward our learning, let me give you the spark notes first and foremost. So when people see things from an advertising and marketing perspective, these are the questions that populate in their head. How will this help me? What will it cost? And who the heck are you? And usually it's who the heck are you first. But these are the three first objections that we have to overcome as we're sending emails to individuals. And when I say cost, it's not always money too. It's also time. Like, I don't have the time. Like, this is too much of a cost because this email might be too long in some situations. Of course, how will this help me? I think is really big because we're answering the question of so what? You sent me this email, so what? Why does this relate to me? Why should I care? Who are you? Of course, we're seeing those other questions pop up, but fundamentally, I incorporate all of these questions into one simple one of so what? You're sending this email, so what? And so we need to address these objections every time we're sending correspondence and when we're marketing and advertising, especially via email. So the maxims in this book are these ones. First and foremost, brilliant writing has no place in advertising. Now, I'm positive that many of us here have probably gone to college or graduated high school, and we have a vernacular that is truly superb and ornate. And at all times, you're magnificently eloquating your points in a verbose way. I'm purposely using big words, of course. We don't do that when we're writing emails. We write at a 5th grade level. And I've heard 3rd grade level before. And honestly, I'd push you in that direction, honestly. Now more than ever, I think language is not getting more refined, especially if you've been on, I hate to pick on my favorite group of people here, the Gen Zs of the world. We kind of hear these words that get simpler and simpler. Sheesh, and these, what is the other one the kids are using these days? That's how you know I'm too old. I said the kids are using these days. They're using words like lit, fleek, I think is way too old these days now. But nevertheless, words are not getting more complicated. They're getting simpler. And so we need to trend in that direction too. And so while you can use those dollar words, as I was taught at a young age, that you had penny words, you had nickel words, dime words, and dollar words, we want to use those penny and nickel words, the simple ones. This is a big thing. This is good. Those are simple, strong words to be using. Of course, never try to show off. And from start to finish, offer service, which is so powerful, of being in that servant leadership mentality. And when you are truly being of service to people, you're going to find you're going to connect with them and build more meaningful relationships over time. We want to forget ourselves entirely. Again, spotlight effect is fundamentally that line. Forget yourself entirely. The spotlight is on our audience. And then we don't want to boast, and we're always aiming to get action. We always want a call to action across the board. And other things that we can envelop that they strongly recommend in this book, My Life in Advertising and Scientific Advertising, is stories. Stories about your organization, stories about your brand. Incorporating that in your email marketing program, very, very powerful. So my question for you is, what stories can you tell? Mateo just said, can you please repeat the name of the book? Yes, absolutely. Let me just type in the chat real quick. Bam. All right. It's in the chat for you right there. Oh, Anna just sent the link. I love it. Okay, great. That was quick too. Thank you, Anna. You're a rock star. All right. So some stories you can tell, especially if we're in the political world. This is very easy to do in a lot of different scenarios. For example, again, I'll just pick on LI, the central challenge, why we were created. We were created because we learned that political technology can affect success. It doesn't matter. A lot of people subscribe to the Sir Galahad theory, right? I will win because my heart is pure, but that isn't necessarily the case. You're going to win based on the number and effectiveness of your activists on your respective sides. So we created Leadership Institute to train the activists how to win. Okay, what's at stake? We can go pick on that now, and who we're helping, specifically with our training programs. I'm not going to just run through every example. You kind of get the picture here, I assume. Let me know if you don't. I'm happy to add a little more context there. Also, with the stories, we can raise the stakes of why we must act now. Let's pick on a campaign, of course. These are great because stories sell and deadlines don't move. And we can continue to raise the stakes. This is the most important election of your lifetime. I hear that every presidential election cycle. Guys, I think this is the most important election of our lifetimes. Every time. They always say that. You'll start noticing it too. Just wait. To 2024, someone's going to say, guys, I'm serious here. I think this is the most important election of our lifetimes. And maybe it is, but people say it to me every year, so I'm getting a little jaded about it. But nevertheless, we can raise the stakes and why people need to act now. And of course, who's on the team? Your values, your supporters, and also citing specific people inside your organization can be great stories to tell. This intern, when they joined, was bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. They went through our rigorous training program. They took their lumps, they took their training, and now I'm proudly pleased to share with all of you here today. This intern is now the vice president of programs at Leadership Institute. And so there's a tremendous path for a lot of individuals that work here. Again, and just a different story about the organization. So there's many stories for you. Please tell stories and utilize them, especially inside of email. But there's so many of them to lean into. And then we also want to convey benefits. We've been talking about benefits for quite some time, so I won't spend too much time here. But of course, we need to know as much about our readers and supporters as possible. We need to look at our analytics. And roughly speaking, we should know at a glance or at a thought, at least two of these criteria. Where are most of your supporters? And what is the average age range of those supporters? Those are immediately some key demographics. Where they are most likely in the world and their average age range will determine my sending time, for example. Let's pick on myself. I'm from the great state of Montana, like I shared for probably too many minutes at the beginning of this training. And that means my audience is 2 hours behind me right now. I'm in Arlington, Virginia. I'm on East Coast time now. That's going to affect my sending time. And so those are the small things that we need to be paying attention to when it comes to our readers and supporters. And we should know at least those two things off the top of our head. And then, of course, as much as we possibly can. We want to write for a specific reader. I think this is also another huge piece of advice. This is something that I did time and time again, was when I was writing an article or writing an email back when I was the editor-in-chief of my online publication, I was writing for one person. And it was a woman named Esther, who actually, ironically, someone here is from Indiana, Esther from Indiana. And she was 57 years old, and she was very concerned about the direction of our country. And she's not real. Maybe she is real. There probably is a 57-year-old Esther in Indiana. But nevertheless, as I was crafting my copy, drafting it, I was thinking about her, and I was talking to her. And of course, that has a ripple effect. And now everybody thinks that I have a one-on-one relationship with them. And that is huge. And a lot of situations, we pick on it here at Leadership Institute. We call it, when people use the word we, it should almost always be you and I. Because and our founder, Morton, actually calls them a we letter. Not very good at all when you're using the words we. Instead, it is you and I. And ironically, when I say that, when I say you hear me. And when I say I, you hear you, which is weird to say back and forth, but that's what's going on. And also when we're conveying benefits, we're using natural language to describe those challenges and benefits. The language that our audience members will most ascribe to. Here's another example of that, just really quickly. If I grabbed a can of Coca-Cola or a can of Pepsi in America and across the world, you're going to call it something very different based on where you are regionally, right? If I'm in Montana, I'm probably going to call it a pop. If I am where I am right now on the East Coast, I'm calling it a soda. And if I'm in the South, they actually just call it a Coke. I was in Tennessee about a year ago, and they said, what do you have? And I was like, I'll have a Coke. And they're like, okay, cool, yeah, what do you have? And I was like, oh. And then the other person was like, yeah, he'll take a Coke. And I said Coke twice. And I was like, can I just say it once? But no, sometimes they'll say, can I have a Coke? And they're like, yeah, okay, I'll take a Sprite. Didn't really realize that until I was in the South. But again, these are the small language choices that make a tremendous difference based on who your audience members are. And regionality certainly plays a small role. If one can of soda has this many different names, you bet your bottom dollar that different policies and different issues will also have different forms as you travel regionally across this beautiful world of ours. So let's use the language that best fits our audience members. And oftentimes we have to overcome obstacles. These are the common ones that we will have to as we convey these benefits. This is what we're trying to convey to them because they will often say that they don't have enough time, or they're doing too much work, or maybe they're just by themselves and they're happy, life is good, leave me alone type of mentality. And our benefits may have to overcome those particular challenges. So I'm doing too much work, you can start laying out in the benefits, I'm so busy, what would I have to do? Easy, 1, 2, 3, right? Those are the benefits, right? You just have to do these 3 things. You'll be done in 2 minutes. I know you're a busy person, and we're already starting to overcome those challenges. Or a person that's working alone a lot, or that lone wolf, or someone who wants to stay alone. Maybe you want a fresh perspective. Do you want to hear what other people in your industry are doing? Kind of want to benchmark yourself against others. And in some situations that may overcome that particular challenge. You're not always going to win people over But these are some potential things we could do to use benefits to overcome that hurdle of resistance. The other big thing that we need to focus on is precise writing. And this one is really, really big. Precise writing. Specific facts and numbers always add more energy and interest to a piece of writing. And the more, and I said this earlier, but the more that we use adjectives like biggest and important, or adverbs like, very, we get, in quote, something to the effect from our audience members of, hey, that offer seems a little too good to be true. And so we want to stick away from those and more push towards specific facts and specific numbers. I actually had a career consultation recently with the woman, and it was night and day on her resume after we switched this one immediately on precise writing, on numbers, not adjectives. And so the story is that it was a conference, and she came up and she wanted a career consultation. Basically, she handed me her resume and we started talking through her career. And I apologize, there is a fire truck passing me right now, so if you hear that, that's kind of what's happening. Anyways, this woman is in a career consultation with me. She's a rock star. She's dressed well. She has her resume there, and she is wanting a job. On her resume, it says that she was responsible for managing interns. And so I asked her, that's really exciting that you are managing interns. That's a cool managerial responsibility. I think that's a good step for you right at this time. But I've got to ask, like, how many interns have you managed? And she said, oh yeah, over the course of about a year and a half, I've managed about 100 interns. I was like, 100 interns? I'm like, where is this on the resume, right? And so we were able to change that word choice to being, provided for and help the logistics of 100 interns and their direct relationships with their supervisors. I don't remember exactly how we worded it, but just putting that number made her resume just twice as powerful. And that's a resume. Now we're talking about email here. Numbers really work. And so specific facts and specific numbers. And that's one of the best things we can open up with inside of our emails. For example, if I was writing an email on, let's pick on Instagram for just a second. I might start with the opening line of, the average American spends more than 1 hour per day on Instagram. That's a pretty notable thing. And again, we're citing specific facts, specific numbers, and now we're starting to kind of peek into that interest. So really encourage you to go down that path. Next, avoid cliches and avoid mixing metaphors. What I mean by mixing metaphors, sometimes, we're using words that don't complement each other or are a little bit contradictory. And a good example of that may be, and actually, do I have this on the next slide? No, I don't. Okay. Yeah, let me use this one. Like, people in this bubble really felt like they were impenetrable, right? And it's like bubbles pop pretty easily, so it doesn't really fit as well as we want it to. And that's what I mean by mixing metaphors. We want everything to work in unison. And I've got a good example of that on the next slide. And of course, long-term versus short-term, important versus urgent. We definitely want to be precise with our writing. And then we don't want to rely on anything that feels tired. And here's a good example of it working really, really well. This is one of my favorite presidents, Ronald Reagan, talking about things that are timeless, yet 50 years later, right now, this feels very, very fresh. And I'll just read it really quickly. This is the issue of this election, whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves. Well, I'll tell you what, this quote hits just as hard in 2021 as it did when he delivered it in his Time for Choosing speech at the convention in 1976, I believe. And if I'm wrong, please let me know, but I'm pretty sure this was 1976. And it still is great. And it's a great turn of phrase. And the imagery is well developed. That far distant capital, right, immediately separates from what we're seeing in the quote here. Far distant capital, little intellectual elite, and whether we abandon the American Revolution. Wow. What powerful words indeed. And then the other big thing here too, and I said this earlier that we want to vary our sentence length, but I just wanted to give an example of it here because this is something I check for all the time, reading something back out loud. And it's also a great final check for typos, but just hear how this one sounds right now. This sentence has 5 words. Here are 5 more words. 5-word sentences are fine, but several together become monotonous. Listen to what is happening. The writing is getting boring. The sound of it drones. It's like a stuck record. The ear demands some variety. Wow. Yeah, see, 5 sentences, 5-word sentences, not great. Let's now vary our sentence length and see what happens. Now listen, I vary the sentence length and I create music. Music. The writing sings. It has a pleasant rhythm, a lilt, a harmony. I use I use short sentences, and I use sentences of medium length. And sometimes when I am certain the reader is rested, I will engage him with a sentence of considerable length, a sentence that burns with energy and builds with all the impetus of a crescendo, the roll of the drums, the crash of the cymbal, sounds that say, listen to this, it is important. Wow, 2 very different sentences for sure. And what made that second paragraph so much more powerful was just varying that sentence length. The other thing that really, oh, it's 3:02. Actually, before I get to the next one, let's pause here for our final break of the training. It's 3:03, so let's go to 3:08 is when we'll kick things back up. I hope hour 2 has been starting to get a little better. We're not done. I'm going to talk about growing your email list in the final hour, but we're going to take our quick last 5-minute break. If you have any questions up until this point, feel free to type them up, leave them in the chat. I'm going to answer them at 3:08 or just press next on the slides. So I will see you all very soon. Our break starts now. All right. It is the final segment of our introduction to email marketing course. I hope you've been having fun. I hope it's been good. I hope you're enjoying it. And let's finish strong. Let's learn some more things. Knowledge is good, and I'm excited that you're here. So, without further ado, we're going to hop right back in. But I see some great questions, so I'm going to start there before opening the PowerPoint again. And Sterling just said, are there any instances where you'd want to use cliches? Also, have you found that using stories rather than data and numbers leads to more engagement? And when would you want to mix both data and a story? A great question overall, a couple of them. To answer it, the first part, any instances where you'd want to use cliches? Yes, but at the same, it's kind of like a dad joke. You know, you're just not going to hit all of the people all the time when you use cliches. Like it's the example that I think of instantly is like when you break up with somebody, like your friend telling you that, don't worry, buddy, there's plenty of fish in the sea. You know, you're just not really, I don't know if it conveys what you want it to convey, even though it is a nice statement. And that's really what cliches are. They're just these overused statements, kind of like, you know, you'll get another one, or, you know, like those common, I always divert back to dad jokes when I think of cliches. So I'm actually blanking on a lot of them, but there's plenty of them out there. And yes, well, there are some times where it would play. I would think of it and be careful with it. And most of the time, I'd steer you away from it. But I can definitely see instances where it would work. And some of the places where it would really work is like, I think one of the ones that sticks out in my head instantly is movies. When people are using like a line from a movie and you use that as like your subject line, or use that line from a famous movie inside like the opening sentence of your email, that could work pretty well. So that might be more of a direction where it's a yes. So I just would generally steer you away, but there are circumstances where it would work. And then, have you found stories rather than data leads to more engagement? Point blank, yes. And then when would you want to mix both data and a story? That's great. So always lead with the story and then finish with data. I, I'm trying to, I struggled teaching this one just because of the acronym. The acronym, and they use this in the UK. This is what they use in the House of Commons. They call it, this is why I'm immature, but here we go. They call it P, like you're supposed to, and they quite literally say you're supposed to, you know, P on someone. But here's what it means. It means point, example, explanation. Point, example, explanation. So to follow that along to your question here, we would tell our point, this needs to happen. Like, I'm in favor of school choice. Here's my story. And then, of course, at the end, I can say with my explanation, a few final statistics that would carry the argument across the finish line. But I'd always start with that story before pushing into the data. But that would be an example of when we're mixing both. And if we are mixing both, I'd start with the story first, hit them with the emotional argument or the persuasional connection. And then we can, support our story and support our point with relevant data, facts, and figures. Fred just said the speech, as it was known, was presented during the 64 campaign on behalf of Barry Goldwater. I should have known that one. Dang, I got it wrong. I said 74. I was thinking it was right before I thought it was the first time. And actually, I said 74, and that's so wrong. It would have been 76 because it was 1980 when he was elected. So yeah, I was just off. Thank you for pointing that out. You are totally right. And Barry Goldwater, what a legend of conservatism. But unfortunately, election-wise, a little tough. But one of Morton, our founder's greatest achievements, was being Barry Goldwater's youngest elected delegate to the 1964 Republican National Convention. So just a random fun fact there. Janet just said, I may have missed this. Are you going to offer this meeting as a downloadable PowerPoint or recording? Well, Janet, I got you covered on both fronts. Yes, I'm going to give you a copy of the recording and a copy of my slides, probably tomorrow morning, but it'll be in your email inbox before 12 p.m. tomorrow, I promise. And then Caroline just said, it would be really helpful too if you could provide a list of books you have discussed here. Yeah, I'm happy to do that. In the email that I send, it's going to say recording and slides. I'll also provide some links to all the books that I've cited. Thank you. That actually will be very helpful. I'm glad you recommended that. Sterling just said, are there any recommendation on paragraph length, styling, and paragraphs in general, or how to style paragraphs? Yes, and I have some actually coming up. And if I don't answer your question, Sterling, in the next couple of slides, please bump me again, but I do have it coming up very, very quickly. So I'm just going to hold off for a second. Anne said, thank you. You are an inspiration. Thank you, Anne. But no, you are the inspiration. You're here right now trying to get better. And one of the things I like to say at the end of my trainings is that if we're looking for leaders of the conservative movement, they're right here in this class. And so you are an inspiration for being here. And thank you for trying to get better at email marketing. All right, so let's go ahead and hop right back in. And let me get over to just really quickly the principles of persuasion. This is another book, again, that I will cite in my thank you email at this point, but this is a very famous New York Times bestseller by Dr. Robert B. Cialdini. Robert B. Cialdini. And he's really an expert in influence and persuasion, and really explored the psychology of why people say yes and how to apply these principles ethically in business and everyday situations. And so he came up with these 6 principles of persuasion, and there's 6, and you don't have to apply all of them at the same time. However, because there's 6, one or more should almost always be available to you as you're crafting copy and building your digital writing. Without using any form of manipulation, you can lean into one of these. Reciprocity, social proof, authority, liking, scarcity, and commitment and consistency. Now, the other big thing I want to say here too is we have some daily practices. I said the quote earlier, a good artist copies, a great artist steals, and we should be doing that in a lot of ways. If you see good examples of an email marketing program, don't be afraid to workshop them, make them uniquely yours in your own way, but leverage kind of maybe the technology they're using or the templates that they're using. And I recommend keeping what we call a swipe file. This is a folder on my computer that I can go to for inspiration, whether I'm trying to create copy for an email or I'm trying to create designs and anything in my world. I've got a swipe file that kind of spurs my imagination pretty quickly. And it's all great examples of what's worked in the past. And then I'm also subscribed, and you should subscribe to a wide variety of good email lists. And there's a lot of them out there. And all of them, almost all of them, like have these referral bonuses and situations where they try and place themselves above other ones, and it's for good reason. They're trying to get as many subscribers as possible. I'm always hesitant to recommend good email lists because it feels like I just play favoritism a lot. But if I was going to name a couple of them that I think are pretty down the line in terms of fair, I really love Eric Wilson's Learn, Test, Optimize. And I also really love Every Morning. I actually read The Morning Brew and just love the stylistic choices they make with their email program. I just typed both of those in the chat. If you typed in Learn, Test, Optimize email list or Morning Brew email list, they'll pop up. You'll be good to go from there. And then Tom just said the newest version of influence includes another principle, which is unity. That's cool. That's really cool. And I completely agree. I think that's a very powerful one. And I think that in a lot of situations, we can look no further back to this past year where we see unity playing a large role of influence. If I, for example, walk downstairs, and thankfully Trader Joe's as a chain has said you no longer need masks on, but I walk downstairs and I try and go into this Trader Joe's without a mask on, people are going to look at me funny, right? They're going to be like, why is this person not wearing one? Or if everyone else is wearing them, I have to wear one too. So I almost see it as like grouping, but I also would call that unity, in the sense that a lot of people like to swim with the tribe and go with the pack. And I see that being a very popular form of influence for sure. That's very interesting. I've not read the new version. I'm glad you pointed that out. Tom's coming in with the fire today. There's things I need to check out. I'm learning from him too, as much as we're kind of helping each other out, which is cool to see. Okay, and then lastly on this slide, I think I didn't say this yet, but yeah, we want to analyze emails that you like. You know which emails have converted you. Which email that has been sent to you got you to open it up? Which email got you to click through? Those are very good examples of what works. And so let's tap into that for our own purposes as well. Awesome. And then now I want to talk about just building your email list a little bit with social media and media in general. So I've got 4 quick, no cost ways to build your email list, because this is one of the biggest questions I get. How do I build an email list? And let me go with the free versions first, and we'll move into the paid version second. So free, no extra money needed, email signatures are a low-hanging fruit that you can immediately apply to get people to sign up for your email list. And this is huge. Again, I asked this at the beginning, in what ways can people sign up for our email list? And in some situations, people have to click 7 times to get to a website, to a particular web page, to finally submit their email address. And in a lot of situations, you can just use your email signature for easy access for people to sign up. And I really recommend adding a UTM link for tracking. And kind of what that looks like, actually, because if you've never done it before, actually, let me just got my Zoom webinar information up. Let me just pull it over here for a second. Okay, so I just typed in into Google UTM Builder. I typed in Google UTM Builder, and that's all this is. So basically with this UTM Builder, this is what the link is. And I'm going to copy and paste this link right there. And this is going to allow me to track if people are actually using this link, and then I can ultimately see my overall effectiveness. And so, oops, I accidentally just clicked off of it. So my website URL might be leadershipinstitute.org. And my campaign source is my email signature. I called it referral. My campaign name was email list growth. And then now they've given me this link. So if I share this link and copy and paste this to appear now back on the PowerPoint right here, now I'm able to track how many times people are clicking that link, which is definitely a good pro tip. And for most links online, you can add some sort of UTM builder and then have additional tracking. And so you can know essentially the effectiveness of your efforts. But I strongly encourage you to take that important step. And then the other thing I say is just keep it simple and always use your face if possible these days. If you have a good face, and I assume you do, you're probably a beautiful person, but people like faces. And also it allows, in a lot of situations, people to remember who you are. And a lot of ways, sometimes we spend the email saying, hey, we met at here, here, and here, and that can jog someone's memory. But for example, I was at CPAC this year, and I probably walked away with 200 business cards. And so when person number 133 emailed me, yes, we talked, but I may not have remembered them entirely. And a profile picture can make a pretty big difference. So definitely consider putting a face to your name. That email signature was created using a website called wisestamp.com. It does cost money. But I just put the link in the chat right there. So it's Wisestamp if you want that picture. That's the one that I use, so I recommend it. Again, not paid by anybody. These are just the ones that I use. Okay, idea number 2 of a no-cost way to build your email list. The first one was a very low-hanging fruit. The second one is 2, but we're going to build up by 3 and 4. 2 is social media bios and cards. Across the board, we want people to be able to sign up for our email list. And these are great ways to drive traffic. And there's a lot of situations, I'll pick on Instagram right now, where the only opportunity you have to drive traffic if you have less than 10,000 followers is with the link in your bio. And so we can maximize this link. I'm using a website called Linktree in this circumstance. When I click the link, it opens up to all these other opportunities. And now we can have all of our digital properties in one centralized link. And of course, one of these boxes should be sign up for our email list. And that's going to be a very positive thing overall. And of course, you can drive traffic in a lot of different ways. You can say also like us on Facebook, and subscribe to us on YouTube, sign up for our email list for updates, and donate here. However many that you need to put there, you're able to. Linktree does cost money, but there is a free version of Linktree, and it's using just canva.com. And let me just pop up another browser over here. Canva.com, and if I go into BioLink website, oops, I just typed Facebook ad. There are Facebook ads here too. BioLink website, here we go. That same principle is right here. So people can sign up for our email list, and there's news and updates. I can just click on this really quickly, and instead of Bailey Santos, this is going to be Stephen Rowe, your favorite real estate broker. I am not a real estate broker, but it looks like I am now. Sign up for email updates, and then, I don't know, follow me on Twitter. Great, so we're good to go. I just have to change the links now, but I just published this as a website in the top right-hand corner. Let's open the website, and now, wow, look at me. I've got my real estate career taken off already, and this was free, right? This was a website that if you've not used it before, wow, it'll change your life, but I'm sure you have, canva.com. And that's now in the bio, it's in the chat as well. The other one that I have here which is more of a new technology. And this is more of an in-person email acquisition effort, but I found tremendous value in it, is dot cards. And basically, let me just open that up real quick. I typed it wrong. Oh, it's fine. Basically, it's an NFC reader. You know how most people these days, and you've been to a restaurant over COVID probably, where you scan the QR code and it goes to their menu. Well, that's basically what this dot card does. So it has a QR code right here that you could scan, but also if a phone has an NFC reader, which basically means that they have Apple Pay or Samsung Pay or Android Pay, anything of that nature, then all this card has to do is touch their NFC reader, and then the website will pop up on their phone. And from there, let me just open it up real quickly. We can see it here pop up, and then it pops up to my personalized web page. And my Wi-Fi is not working as well as I want it to, but now we can kind of see what's going on here. And this is a card that at a party, at a conference, at a rally, I could just touch people's phones, of course, with their consent, but I can just touch people's phones and immediately transfer a link for people to sign up for my email list, and also follow me on social media and all of those important steps, and download my contact information. Very cool. These things are $20 one time. So you don't have to pay for like a monthly subscription or anything, $20 and it's yours, right? Pretty good one-time payment. If you get 5 emails from this, it's probably worth the $20 you've got for the card itself. Pretty new, pretty revolutionary. I recommend it. The third way, no cost, of course, is your home page. But I've seen so many campaigns that don't have a clear email capture form within their call to action on their website. I've already kind of picked on this, so I'll leave it alone. But of course, across the board on our internet, on our website, excuse me, on the web pages that are the most trafficked, people should be able to sign up for our email list. And then of course, exit intent pop-ups. This is my fourth and final no cost way to build your email list. And these just trigger, you've done this before, where you have tried to exit out of a website and it goes, wait, don't go. And then you can sign up for their email list. And that really works pretty well. And of course, if you paid attention, you see these all over the place. And these really work best when you have an aggressive, compelling call to action. And a campaign setting maybe might be, get the news about our campaign. The liberal media won't tell you. And that could be really cool. If you have a WordPress website, this is no cost. If you do not have a WordPress website, I have answers for you to get one of these, but it will cost you money probably. But these two are free, Mail Opt-in and Hustle. These are free WordPress plugins, and WordPress runs roughly about a third of the websites on the internet. So I hope that might be some of us here today, but it's pretty great. Ultimately, your exit intent pop-ups will reduce your bounce rate as well. And we want to provide as much value as we can inside of it. Like, we want them to be able to get something for it. It's kind of like a this for that in most situations. Is a transaction, like get this free ebook or get this video series, sign up for our email list and be entered into win a contest for $5,000, things like that. Now, this one's going to cost money on most situations, but this is the best way that I know how to build an email list in 2021. List building, petitions, and surveys. This is, in my opinion, the best way to grow an email list. And it's for us to create and promote petitions and surveys via social media, text messaging, and your website. And really, it starts when you have to choose a topic that is both timely and relevant. Because our objective here is to swim with the current of online conversation and tap into existing interest around a topic. And if you try to promote a petition that your audience isn't immediately concerned about, you're just going to get fewer email signups. And so here's 2 ideas for you right now that are free. And when you get 100 new email subscribers, you're welcome. Maybe buy me a cup of coffee or something. We'll call it even. So the first one, if you run this right now, I promise you, you're going to get more email subscribers. Here it is. Should Trump be the GOP nominee in 2024? Well, we can ask our supporters, we can ask our fans, and we'll probably get some polarizing answers, both saying yes and saying no. But here's what's going to happen. Most importantly, whether they said yes or they said no, before they said that, they gave us their email address and hopefully their name and their phone number as well. That's really the win right there. Will Trump be the nominee in 2024? Very solid petition idea right now. Here's the second one. What should be done about big tech censorship? And then maybe we give people a list of options. We're going to go survey style now. Instead of the list building petition or list building survey. And that will give them the option to say, repeal section 230, or, conservatives need to mass leave Facebook and go to Parler, or, we need to, write antitrust laws and break up Google and Facebook, right? We just need to come up with survey responses. And then we, again, get valuable information that we can use to segment our lists. And also we get people's contact information first and foremost. And so this is great. And what we do first is we were A/B testing our emails, we do the same thing with our list building petitions and surveys. Send it to a smaller batch first of people. Again, if we had 100, we'll send it to 10. We'll send it 5 people this one, we'll send 5 people that one, and then we'll send to the 90 the petition and survey that we found gets the most engagement, the one that works best. Okay, so I got some questions. Mateo just said, on the question of face, how important is it to give a face to a campaign? How better impactful can it be? Yeah, that's a great question. And I would almost always say it is very important to add a face to a campaign. The only exception that I can think of in my head is if you are like acting maliciously, like you're like a hacker syndicate. Most notably, like in America right now, we had our Colonial Pipeline, which services the entire East Coast, was hacked by a group called DarkSide, right? Evil, nefarious, it kind of sounds like that. There's also hacking groups called like Anonymous. Those would be circumstances where campaigns and movements don't have a face. But for everything that is above the sun, so to speak, where you're trying to promote good or you're trying to take action in the world, there should almost always be a face to that campaign. There needs to be a clear and distinct leader. And if there isn't one, then you need to become that person in a lot of different respects. So to answer your question, it's very important. And your campaign will be more impactful. And let's just cite a couple of them, right? Let's pick on the American Revolution, one of my favorite topics in history. There were some faces to that campaign, right? We had famously George Washington, famously Paul Revere, and could you go on the list of our founding fathers that were the faces of the movement? Let's pick something that's not America. Let's say that we're talking about, I was just watching Braveheart recently with Mel Gibson, great movie. That was a face to a movement, that was a really big face to a movement that started something really great. Let's pick a sci-fi one now. Let's go The Hunger Games, right? Katniss Everdeen. She was the face of the movement, right? We could go down the list and both nonfiction and fiction, but there was always the leader. There's always the masthead, the figurehead, the person leading the charge. And so, yes, very important, very impactful. And then you said, how much can a campaign be made more effective? How much can a campaign be made more effective, engaging? I'm not sure I understand the question. How much can a campaign be made more effective, engaging? I see you just typed another question. Okay, you just said, does the face of the campaign have to be the same person who writes the campaigns, but then it is no longer a job, but a mission? Yeah, so to answer your question, the face of the campaign does not have to be the same person that writes the campaign at all. But we do have to have some sort of leader. There has to be some sort of CEO. There has to be some sort of president. There has to be some sort of executive, or words of that nature in that direction. But that doesn't have to be the same person that is writing the message by any means. Most famously, I would pick on Hollywood people. They have ghostwriters every single day. They're the people that write the message, but there's the person who sings the song, and then there was the ghostwriter that wrote the song. So very much the person who writes the campaign does not have to be the face of the campaign, but there has to be a clear face in my recommendation. Okay, so we see some different ways we can build lists and petitions. The cheapest, most effective way, if we're spending $0, is Google Forms, which is very powerful. And it's great because as you get answers, it'll just export into a Google Sheet. So your data is pretty organized and ready to roll. That's certainly ideal. But we can get a little bit more technical and more practical with this as well. Here's some more examples of email list building campaigns that happened in 2020. This was a add your names first and foremost. Welcome President Trump to Oklahoma. And they would give President Trump a list of people, and he'd it'd probably be a really quick thing. You're probably like, here's the list. He looks at it and he's like, very good. Okay. But nevertheless, he does look at the list, or at least they promise to at least give him the list. And that's pretty exciting for people because your name's going to appear there as a supporter. And of course, if you notice, first name, last name, and email. That's exactly what we're getting before they add their name. That is the name of the game. And then, of course, we've got some surveys. Here's a topical survey. And the cool thing about this is you can see the actual Facebook ad that we wrote and typed out, and then actually the landing page that it pushed towards. So a great example of using a landing page. And the other big thing too is it's a very seamless transition, if you can tell, right? The color scheme matches. It's all very connected. And that's really a big thing that we should try and create if possible. But it says polling is shown. Biden pulled ahead. Will you stand with Tim and Trump? And of course, you're able to give your name, phone number, and email right there. And here's one from one of America's favorite governors in South Dakota. We've got Kristi Noem, who had a fantastic survey. Again, issue surveys, in my opinion, are some of the most effective list building efforts that we can do because of that segmentation that I've been really harking on all day. But at this point, it's probably ingrained in your brain, and I've done my job. So fingers crossed. But overall, she says, I want to know what matters most to you in South Dakota. And then you're able to do this issue survey and see exactly how you see exactly how this happens. But the biggest thing, before they even ask the question, what is the most important issue? They're gathering your first name, your last name, and your email. And that is the entire point. So that is the highest level of list building that is used in politics today. But we can do it for free with Google Forms. We just need the right topic that's timely and relevant, and then we'll start pushing it out to our followers and our supporters across social media. And of course, text messaging as well. And we could do this in person, quite frankly, depending on the scenario. Picking on Facebook for just a second, Facebook, of course, being the largest social media platform, 2.85 as of Q1 of 2021, 2.85 billion with a B monthly active users. So it's nothing to sneeze at, that's for sure. For email list growth purposes, I strongly recommend leveraging Facebook groups and using Facebook Messenger, and then of course running advertisements. So let's work through all three of those. Let's start with Facebook groups. There's a Facebook group for everything, everything at this point. I highlighted some of them here right now. Tea Party Conservatives for Freedom has 40,000 members in it. Georgia Conservatives United has 29,000 members in it. These groups get so big, it's insane. I mean, I've seen groups at 150,000 plus at this point, and there's probably some that are way over 200,000. And these people have all self-identified that they care about this particular topic, right? Conservative politics, or these people identify as conservative women, or Christian conservatives rising. These are huge things that we can tap into. Now, it's not as easy as go in there, share a link and say, join my email list, and everyone's gonna just hop right into your email list. It's not that, it takes work, but joining these communities is gonna be a big step overall. For example, I love citing, I'm gonna cite another book. I'm not realizing how many books I cite. Maybe it's a good thing, maybe it's a bad thing. I'm addicted to books. But anyways, it's a book by Gary Vaynerchuk, Gary V on social media, very popular man. And the book is Jab, 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 Right Hook. And that's the basic principle that we should be applying to our Facebook groups. Give, 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 and then we ask. And so we need to deposit more value than we're extracting, so to speak, which means when we join this Facebook group, we've got to get a lay of the land. What are the rules? Not all Facebook groups are made the same. Sometimes you can shamelessly promote yourself, and other times you cannot. And so we'll get the lay of the land. We'll get connected to this community. And we'll give 3 times, and then we can ask, hey, I've got an email list. You should join it. Or, hey, come to my website. And then, of course, on your website is the ability for them to join your email list, and they'll at least be prompted in the exit intent pop-up or something of that nature. So give, 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 ask, and you can leverage these Facebook groups with some hustle to yield some pretty big results in terms of page views, which will likely transition into email acquisition as well. In 2016, as a fun fact, when we used to do this pretty heavily, we had a Google Excel spreadsheet of all the Facebook groups for all of the Republican candidates at the time. And there was like 16, there was like Carly Fiorina, there was Ben Carson, there was, of course, Donald Trump, Ted Cruz, Marco Rubio, Rand Paul. I could go down the list. There's so many people that ran for president in 2016. And there'd be Facebook groups for all of these individuals. And so if I had an article that was positive about Donald Trump, I would post them in the Trump Facebook groups and I would get a crazy amount of engagement. And the same goes for every other candidate. If I had something positive for Cruz, for Rubio, for Rand Paul, down the list, posting in these Facebook groups leveraged a huge boost in page views. And of course, that yielded email signups. Very positive thing. Now, the next one is advertising. I only have 20 minutes left with you, so I cannot go deep into advertising, but I can give you enough to be deadly. These are the cheapest ways to advertise on Facebook in 2021. First is a lookalike audience, and the second is using a Facebook pixel. A lookalike audience, from theory, is you have an email list already. Let's just say your email list is 50 people. Well, you can upload that list to Facebook and say, hey, Facebook, I'm looking for people with the 1% variation of these individuals. And basically, you're setting those parameters. You uploaded the list using their uploader. It's very easy to do. And now Facebook goes to work. Basically, they match those emails with Facebook profiles. Kind of creepy, but also now that they've done that match, now they're looking for a 1% variation of those people based on, their algorithm, which may be more than 100 points of data. Who knows, really? It's their proprietary algorithm. Nevertheless, it's now you're advertising to people that look like the people that are already on your list. That's why it's so effective. It's a lookalike audience in the sense that these people naturally are probably inclined to sign up or are aligned with your mission in some sort of way. So very powerful overall, works incredibly well, and a 1% variation is the way to do it. If you want to learn more about how to do this, this is seriously about a 30, maybe 40-minute video or topic to really break it down. I recommend just going to YouTube and typing in lookalike audience. There's going to be somebody there that will definitely help out a ton. I'm happy to walk you through it as well post this training, but it's just such a big topic that I can only just give you the background of what's happening. And if you look it up, you'll find your answers. And the second one is Facebook pixels. This is just a small snippet of code that goes in the header tags of your website and allows Facebook to track the traffic from your website and Facebook and vice versa. And so you've seen this before. You're on Amazon, you're trying to buy some shoes or something. You decide not to buy it right away. You go back to Facebook, and now those shoes are being advertised to you. You're like, oh man, getting retargeted. And that's what a Facebook pixel allows you to do. And there's a lot of application there in politics, especially. Some of them that stick out in my head immediately. The one way that I'm always retargeting is if somebody goes to my donation page and does not donate, I'm going to hit them with an ad saying that they should come back, or if I can find their information in another way, I can probably pitch them and get them to donate. If they got to the donation page and didn't donate, maybe something in the real world just stopped them, but they're pretty close to crossing that finish line. And I would be willing to spend some money to see if they could actually make a full donation. Another way we could use retargeting is if people are going to specific issue pages on your website. Let's say that I'm talking about my issues and I have issues on, the economy and, the climate and education, whatever we're talking about in a particular election. Well, if they went to that page, well, now I can retarget them with specific advertisements as it relates to that. They're obviously concerned about, or they're obviously a fan of my education policy. So now when they go back to Facebook, they're going to see Stephen Rowe, champion of education. And now we have the most targeted advertisements possible. So those are the best ways to advertise. At a quick nutshell look, Facebook pixels are very easy and quick to install. No coding is required. Basically, you're just copying and pasting. You just have to have access to the back end of your website. And then lookalike audiences, also very easy. Just take some time to get set up, and there's a video out there for you for sure. Hopefully that was helpful. Then finally, I just have rules for a good Facebook ad on Facebook advertising. Visually engaging, audience focused, has value, and there's a clear call to action. And we have to, with visually engaging, create stopping power. Like I said earlier, stop people from scrolling. Audience focused, we're reaching the right people at the right time with the right message. It has value, so they actually want to click. There's something in it for them, and a clear call to action so that they can take that necessary action. And really, the successful social strategy, it's all about consistency. We want to intrigue, but not mislead. This really speaks to the clickbait of the world. Of course, I want you to be tantalizing. I want you to be, purposefully coy. However, you cannot lie to people in your subject lines, on social media, across the board. One of the hardest things to build with strangers online is trust. But one of the easiest things to lose from strangers online is absolutely trust. So intrigue, but don't mislead. Of course, know your audience, which I've been saying, and we want to under promise and over deliver, a very famous age old adage that is 100% accurate. And we need to be experimenting with different content types. We need to mix it up. And so we can't just say, join my email list, join my email list, join my email list. Like I said earlier, we have to give before we ask. And so that's what I call the ATM strategy as well. When I say balance posts, basically it's the same thing as the book, but that's how it was taught to me when I was first getting started was an ATM strategy. And I was in middle school one time and I had about $40 to my name, which is a lot for a middle schooler. $40 is pretty good. I was living large. I thought I could buy anything at Toys R Us. I'm pretty sure that place is closed at this point. So I'm aging myself a little bit here, but I had $40. I thought I was a rich guy. I was feeling really good. And I went to my ATM and I was curious. I was like, what if I say 60? What if I just type in 60, or will it give me $60 instead of $40? And the ATM responded, oof, you've overdrawn your account, can't complete the transaction. I'm like, dang, that's too bad. But that's the same principle that applies to us posting on social media. We've overdrawn our account, which is why we're not getting engagement and we're not getting clicks. We have to deposit value before we can take out our value. And so let's balance those posts. A couple things we could do. Quote graphics are an easy one, very low-hanging fruit, visually striking. Quote graphics with people always look really, really good. Going on live on Facebook, if we're talking about Facebook right now, that could be a really powerful tool, and just communicate directly with your audience members. We could ask a question or a poll. We could share an interesting article that doesn't link to our website necessarily. And then of course, as we're giving, now we can finally ask, hey, join my email list, or you won't believe what I'm about to talk about next. You'll know if you sign up for my email list though. And we can kind of push in that direction. We always want to engage with people online too. And a good way to think of this is, if you've ever reached out to a famous person online, like if you reached out to Selena Gomez, if you reached out to Ben Shapiro, or if you reached out to, pick another random person, Cristiano Ronaldo, then you're like, hey, I love you, you're the best, you're incredible. And they respond just by liking the comment. You're just like, oh, they acknowledge me, they know I exist, they like the comment, it's amazing. That same principle really applies in a lot of different respects, especially from an organizational perspective. And so if people are interacting with you positively online, engage with them. And then hopefully we can convert them across the finish line. And of course, we want to fit our brand into narratives that are helping us at the time. Influencers are a tremendous way to reach a lot of people very quickly. And it's more than that. Really, you can transform your audience into the faces of your brand by leveraging account takeovers and stories. And I know when influencers are mentioned, the biggest word or thought in people's head tend to be like celebrities. And that's not always the case here. Many successful influencer strategies often involve many small influencers. Typically, a consumer must see your message about 7 times before it's internalized. And that means many friends of a consumer posting about something is often more impactful than one large influencer saying something just once. And so a good question is, who are the people around you right now with strong social media followings, maybe in your organization, that you could tap into and maybe help along the way of your email program? And then one thing that I like to do, and we recommend here at Leadership Institute, is we give them a title and we get them involved. Titles are free, yet people will become the title that you give them. And so it's a powerful tool overall, and people will feel more connected with your brand, more connected with your movement if you give them a title. And what's another good example of a title? This is kind of one. And influencers do this as well, where if you're part of a particular influencer's tribe, right? Let's pick on Taylor Swift, and then you're a Swiftie, right? Or if you like Logan Paul, then you're part of a Low gang, right? If you like PewDiePie, then you are a gamer. There's so many of those. And so maybe there's something like that for your organization. Not always, but again, I'm just kind of painting in broad strokes because some of this may help you more than others. But for someone out there, if you have a large, loyal, dedicated following, have you thought about what you're going to name your tribe? And oftentimes the tribe will name themselves, but a little direction from leadership never hurts either. I just want to give you some resources as well when it comes to social media branding. If you are looking for things to take place, these are what I recommend. If you're looking for freelancers, I recommend Fiverr.com and Upwork. They'll be able to do web development projects. They'll be able to install that Facebook pixel. If you need a pop-up installed on your website so that actually appears, Upwork.com will probably be able to get your back on that one. I've actually used Upwork to create a scrolling email acquisition box before, and it worked really, really well. So I recommend them now. We walked through Canva before, and if I like video blocks for stock footage, that just has been helpful for a lot of people before, so I just kind of tossed that one in there. But of course, while we're on social media, we have to remember at all times our goal is to gather data, not followers. We're trying to convert. We saw at the beginning those rented versus owned channels. We're trying to own our channel. We're trying to pull and squeeze people off of these rented audiences into our own channel. Gather people's names, phone numbers, and emails, and you're going to be in a better situation for success and convert to that owned audience at all times. Now, I want to close and finish this training in the final 10 minutes by just talking about your website and things you can do to optimize your website as it relates to your email marketing program. So first and foremost, let's take a quick pit stop back at a landing page. These are essential for success for acquiring email addresses. These are my rules for a great landing page. Short and direct, inspires confidence. Basically, this is the real deal. It's not, you didn't click off to go somewhere else. Easy and engaging, and it matches that advertisement and marketing appeal. So here's some examples of some landing pages that I feel are compelling. We'll do the first one, which is a political example. This is the NRCC, the National Republican Congressional Committee. And if you clicked on their ad, it would push you to this landing page. You can only do two things on this landing page. And really, I advocate one, but I understand why they have two. But you can either give them your contact information or you can donate. Very simple, very clean landing page that I think conveys the message pretty well over what we're trying to do with this page. Just capture people's information. Here's one from a non-political organization. This is Lyft, the popular ride-sharing company. But I found their landing page to be pretty compelling overall, to be honest with you. So I wanted to use it as an example. And the reason for that is I think they do really great with the visuals. The woman plays really well with the sun in the background, which is adding a nice yellow across the board. But even more than that, they have a calculator at the bottom. It says, see how much you can make. You can type in how many hours you're going to work, what city you're going to be in, and it'll actually populate, the average amount of money that you're going to be making. That's a little bit higher level than most of us, especially in the political realm, but at the same time, just a good example of another landing page. It's very intentional across the board, politically and non-politically. Here's one that I just made very quickly on my personal website. We train conservatives. Are you with us? And then it says, I'm with you. And you fill in that email and you're off to the races. I just created this one quickly on squarespace.com. Nothing too fancy, but just a fun example. And of course, we're always integrating our website across the board. There should, and I recommend this, an email sign up on every page. And it looks different on every single page. Well, let me rephrase that. There's an email sign up on every page, but your homepage email sign up may look different than maybe a blog article or the About Us webpage. Here's what we could be doing. So at the homepage, in the bottom right-hand corner, we could have a pop-up that immediately ignites and says, sign up for our email list. It could also be a exit intent pop-up, or it could be a scrolling pop-up where as I scroll down the website at the top of the web page, it starts to scroll down and now you can enter your email address. All very good options. And then inside a web page, I could maybe just have a box at the bottom of an article where it says, yeah, if you like this article, sign up for our email list so you can get the latest breaking updates. And so it's different on every page as to the design of the email acquisition effort, but on almost every page, and really every page, but I'm going to say almost every page because sometimes maybe not, but we should be trying to capture people's email addresses. And then landing, of course, we have those landing pages and we want to give value where possible. And there's a lot of ways that you can give value. Ebooks, stickers, and videos are what I cited here, but there's some other things we could do too. One of the more effective ones I've seen is contests, and I think they work really, really well. I've seen one recently that was we give $5,000 to a new email subscriber every month, and all you have to do is subscribe to our email list, and we will notify the winner and the next email newsletter announcement. Very exciting. And also, you can bet your bottom dollar that everyone who is invested in this contest is going to open that next email to see if they won. And so that is also just another great small little thing we could do to potentially be acquiring email addresses more and more along the way. And of course, I mentioned quite a few pop-ups, and I did it on purpose because pop-ups work, but we don't want to be annoying. And so if there is a potential way that we can track, ideally, I want to say this in the right way possible. Okay, let me move to the next slide before I say it. Okay, so yeah, pop-ups work, and we want to promote, and I just gave away, I said content, I meant contests. I apologize, I just saw that typo, and offers. And exit intent pop-ups tend to work best. I already provided these links to the free WordPress ones. I do have a paid option for you. This is the one I recommend to political campaigns and organizations if people are asking me about pop-ups. It's called Opt-in Monster. And this is what I was going to talk about because there's so many different types of pop-ups that we can deploy. So you can see there's a lightbox pop-up, floating bars. That was the one I was talking about earlier as you scrolling boxes. We've all probably seen those gamified wheels. I never win those wheels, and you were never designed to win those wheels. It's kind of like Vegas, where you kind of set the wheel, but it always lands in the same place. It's like, here's your 15% off, like have fun. I don't know. But maybe you can change it up a little bit with yours. Page level targeting, which is really exciting. The exit intent pop-ups, so I mentioned those are the best ones. So if you're trying to install those on your website, this is how you do it, optedmonster.com. And again, I'm not being paid to advertise them. They are just the most effective ones. They have so many, and they also do landing pages pretty well too. So I really recommend this service. And another thing in 2021 that I'm excited to offer as an opportunity for email acquisition is chatbots. Chatbots work, and they are increasingly existing on the World Wide Web, and they work pretty well overall. And it's really exciting to see it from your perspective if you have these on your site. I've got two of them that I recommend. I've got liveperson.com and LiveChat Inc. And the example that I have here is actually LiveChat. This is right here, LiveChat, which is $33 a month. Not too bad, especially when it comes to acquiring people's email addresses and also answering questions if you're selling products or services, or people are trying to get involved in your campaign. Even more and more in politics, I see these that exist now, because if people want to volunteer and knock doors and make phone calls or even just donate money, oftentimes if you have a pop-up that just hits with a chat box, that pops up, you could be in a really good situation because you're a real person communicating with a person that is ready to take action right away. So a huge thing to think about. And the exciting thing on the side that is ours, the back end, is most of these LivePerson, LiveChat actually does not have a back-end app, but you can still use your phone. But with LivePerson, which is notable, is if someone is on your website and they have a question and it's during the hours you set, you can say that, because it says you're online, right? So you can choose office hours. So you can only be online between 9 and 5. So you don't have to worry about getting blown up at 2 o'clock in the morning or anything, unless you want to. And then they respond to the website. They say, hey, I've got a question about X, Y, and Z, about your candidate, about your policies, about whatever. It's going to pop up like a text message on your phone, which is really cool. It's going to be like Facebook Messenger, right? It's going to pop up. It's like, oh, okay, let me just respond to this person who's on my website right now and can answer their question at the time that they ask it. And if you answer questions quickly like that, people love it. People love getting their questions answered quickly. So I strongly recommend chatbots these days. They work very well. And as you can tell, they're not very expensive overall either. Okay, I've got this last slide with you, and it's just successful return on investment metrics. These are the common metrics that I'm tracking through my email programs all the time, every single day. Number one is our growth and attrition rates. Are you tracking your weekly audience numbers? So how many people subscribed and how many people unsubscribed based on every single email? Next is our cost per acquisition, which is our CPA, which is how much did it take to acquire an email address. And if we know that, then we become very deadly as marketers, very deadly. An example of that really quickly, and this person is a mentor to me in a lot of ways in digital, works at another nonprofit here in Washington, D.C. Anyways, he sent out a sticker because he knew his cost per acquisition for it. So he bought a bunch of stickers for his organization, probably about 10,000 of them or something of that nature. And that dropped the cost point to like 2 cents, 3 cents a sticker, something around that ballpark. And because he knew that price point and he knew how much an email acquisition was worth, he knew that if he got an email sign up, that was worth on average about $1.50 for their organization, that he could give away these stickers for free. And so they had a big marketing campaign where they spent money on Facebook ads to say, claim your free sticker. And the sticker was just stop liberal privilege. So it was a really beautiful, simple, nice, clean sticker. And of course, to send you the sticker, which they did send completely free, there actually were no strings attached other than we have your contact information, which is a pretty big string though, was you just need to send just your name, email, phone number, and mailing address, and you get this free sticker. And what this yielded was just a great result because they got, I mean, he had like 10,000 stickers and he got rid of all of them. And they've got almost 10,000 email signups. I think it was like 7,000 email signups. And of course, as they start to deploy a welcome email series and start to increase those threshold asks over time, those people were worth far more than the expenses it took to create the free stickers and advertise them to the people. Very powerful thing. He was able to do that because he knew his cost per acquisition. So that number is a very important one and allows you to make some very key and strategic data-based decisions. The other things we're tracking are average engagement rates, on average your open rate, on average your click-through rate, and finally your traffic to your website. You know, the total visits, the sources of your traffic, and your top internal pages to make sure we're optimizing those pages for the best and most ideal success online. So thank you so much. I hope that this introduction to email marketing course has been fun, been exciting, and I hope you learned something along the way. There's so much to talk about when it comes to email marketing, and I hope that I at least got you excited to do it. If one person here takes this training and runs with it, I will be ecstatic, I will be thrilled, and I'll be pumped. And if more than one person does, then let's keep it going. And as I said, if we're looking for leaders in the conservative movement, it's all of us in this classroom right now. So please, 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 please do me and the conservative movement a really big favor and start playing an active role online, because it's important that we do so. We absolutely know that liberal professors, administrators, academics, talking heads, the media are not sharing a conservative message, especially online. And if they won't, then we will. And it's up to us. So thank you. I really appreciate you for being here. Just in closing, a couple housekeeping items. Number one, as soon as I close this webinar, it's going to open up a Google Form survey. Please, please, please fill it out. Let me know what you thought of this course. And most importantly, the question that I had in there is, how could this course be better? And I take that question so seriously. And so if you feel like I could talk about something else, or I missed something when it comes to email marketing, or you wanted me to focus on something a little more, or anything along those lines, please fill that point that question out as quickly as possible, because that one is my favorite one. And it'll take you no more than a minute. There's only 3 questions, so it's very, very quickly, very, very quick. Well, thank you all so much. I appreciate the thank yous. The last housekeeping item before I let you go is you're going to receive the recording and a copy of the slides I used to present tomorrow morning. First thing in the morning before 12 p.m. That'll be in your inboxes. And I'm also going to cite all the books that I brought up here too. So it's all been pretty great. Thank you all so much. Have a fantastic Wednesday. And until the next Leadership Institute training, remember to leave everyone and everything better than you found it.